Welcome back, SMITE fans. That was past J-Mac telling you what happened in week number 4, and it's now present J-Mac to introduce you to week 5 of the SMITE Pro League, brought to us by our good friends over at Prime Gaming. Make sure that you are making the most of your Prime subscription to get that free 2-day shipping on all the things that you were probably already going to buy, as well as getting free music, movies, and more with just the Prime membership. Then link that over to your Twitch account and make sure to get your Prime Gaming stuff so you can get free games and free content in all the games that you were probably already playing. Thank you so much for Prime Gaming for being the sponsor of Season 9 of the SMITE Pro League. And it's not just me over on the desk. I still got Mifflin sitting by with me as we get ready to take you into the SMITE Pro League for our first day of the new week. The first half of the phase is completely over. Every team has played against each other once, and now we get our reset into the second round of the round robins.
Yeah, run it back. Let's see. If you lost last time, now's the time to prove that it was a fluke. If you won last time, prove that it wasn't a fluke. So excited to see these teams match up now that we've got a better look at how they're playing. But with that said, sure, you've made your adaptations. 9-5 changes, all that. You know, TTK it's a completely different SMITE. Mid-season's like right around the corner, and it's another completely different SMITE.
Mid-season could change everything up, and let's take a look at the schedule to see what all action we have in store for you this week, and what a game that we get to start off the second half of the phase with. The Camelot Kings and the Tartarus Titans to begin our day and our week, and the Atlantis Leviathans and the Oni Warriors right after. So two great sets, and then we get Jade Dragons and the Valkyries, Solar Scarabs, and the Bolts. Should be an interesting one after the Scarabs found a win last week over the Leviathans, finally finding that 3-game set win that they have been waiting for. Then the Warriors, Scarabs, Valkyries, Kings, and then another big one to close out the weekend, Tartarus Titans and Atlantis Leviathans for our final set on the triple header Sunday.
Yeah, anytime the Kings, the Levi's, and the Titans are playing, like those are the 3 teams I'm keeping my eyes on right now. The Olympus Bolts right up there with them, just dominating at the top of the league, consistent SMITE play, ones that you need to keep your eyes on. So this week, just kind of stacked in general.
Yeah, this is a big week, and you can see after our first half of the phase is done, it was the Camelot Kings who came out on top 6-1 for their standings, only had 1 loss during the entirety of that first phase. I'm trying to look back and even see to remember who that one was to. Actually, it was to the Tartarus Titans. So a bit of a rematch between these two teams to see if the Kings can find and maybe pick up the mistakes that they had against the Tartarus Titans in that first matchup, and see if maybe they can find a win this time around.
Yeah, the last couple of times they'd matched up against each other, they had said, hey, look, this is a matchup that is really close and is generally dictated by P's and B's. If we're out drafting, we're probably going to win because as far as mechanics go, play on field, both incredibly similar in that it's lonely at the top, right? Like once you're at this high level of play and you're at the highest level of the highest level of play, it really just does come down to strategy and how good you're feeling on day of.
We'll have to at least see exactly what goes through. Actually, I'm not mistaken, it was the Leviathans who found that win on them.
Yeah, they play spoiler.
The Tartarus Titans, definitely with those Leviathans coming in big. But for the Titans, their solo laner SOT has been going really all over the board with his pick style. We saw the Ullr solos come up at the start of the phase right after Masters. We saw the Poseidon solo come out at the end of last week, and even the more traditional solo lane style of play. Maybe kind of a difference compared to what Variety's been doing over on the opposite end. We'll talk about him a little bit more, but I've also got to mention that SOT was your MVP, the most valuable primer of week 4. With stats like that, and with the performance that he had, can't really argue too much against it.
Yeah, even in games where he's falling down early, right? I believe it was this match where SOT falls down for first blood on first wave and then second blood on third wave. Still was first hit level 20 in the game at around that 18-minute mark. Crazy pacing, phenomenal 1v1 presence. One of the deepest god pools in the soul lane as well, still going towards things like the Poseidon, the Ullr, very capable of playing the standard warriors, and then at times even busting out some of those assassins. So SOT, a player that is very difficult to lock down, and one that is going to either hold his own in lane or just win it outright.
With that one, and for a 2.5 KDA to round out the 4th week of play, SOT, definitely a player who's been able to step up for the Tartarus Titans. A bit of a slow start whenever he first came over to this team, still adapting to the play style of the remainder of his roster, but has now found his own in that solo lane, has found the way that his team likes to play, and it really feels like with SOT, he's been able to really meld well with the style of play that the Titans have adapted to. But across the way, going up against Variety, someone who's playing kind of just his own game. We've talked to the players multiple times before, a very stubborn solo laner of when Variety has in mind what he wants to play, he's just going to play it.
Yeah, I wonder how much of that is true and held true with the entirety of the league, or it's just the rest of the Kings like to razz them, right? Because it feels like any opportunity we get, CaptainTwig, Biggie, BigManTingz, even Netrioid at times, Genetics, of course, if they are given the opportunity to say anything about Variety, they're saying it, right? Like, he's stubborn, he's inting, he's the designated inter of the team. And I suppose when you're winning as consistently as the Camelot Kings, you're allowed to have some fun at the expense of some of your teammates, and especially if Arati is playing as he has been recently, because very consistent is the exact verbiage I would use to describe Variety's play. On things like the Jing Shen, the RDO, the initiators for his team, he's always the first one in. He's always finding these multi-man CCs. He's holding his own in the lane, and then once he gets to those team fights, just absolutely dominating. But you are right to say that Variety at times plays Variety picks, and at times looks real good in Variety's hands, and at others, maybe not so much. Things like the Ratatasker come to mind, in that he is one of the only ones still going towards that in the Soul lane, and he's either just absolutely fragging that lane, rotating to mid, controlling mid camps on his own, and becoming a fourth member, third partying the 3v3 in mid, or he's just stuck in his tower and AFK until level 20 and hoping the rest of his team wins out. So as far as consistency is concerned, I would argue that SOT probably has him beat out slightly, but similar top ends from both of these players.
And I'm sure really both these solo laners, Variety in particular, kind of coined the solo lane right now as the handshake lane. I'm either two Guardians facing off or a couple of Warriors. Not a whole lot is going to get done. And
you got to think that if you're playing Jing Chen.
I mean, if you're playing Jing, I don't even know if you're just doing like a handshake. You're just kind of seeding the lane at that point. You're just
locking
saying,
in Jing Chen is getting in your opponent's face and saying, shake my hands, shake it.
It's the most aggressive style of handshake that you could ask for.
That's right.
You're forcing them to at that point. But we did get a moment to sit down with a couple of these players and kind of get their mind and kind of think about how their first half of the phase has gone. So let's throw it over to that interview.
Last time against the Kings we lost, and our team, I feel like we've kind of improved and we've adapted our own meta in the game currently. That's really all that's changed from now to then.
We won against them last time we played them, and that's actually what we were looking for because we've been losing against them. They were kind of our nemesis, so that felt really good, and that meant that we can actually win against them for the next games. We have changed a lot because most of the time we will do VOD review, whichever team we played, and we will say, we did this wrong, we picked this wrong, we, I don't know, lost on the picks and bans, and we try to overcome those situations. And then for the next set against that team, whichever we are playing, we will do better when it comes to those points.
The Kings still have their same picks and the same style that they run. They still like the Neath, and they still play like the global for Big Man. I think they're going to kind of do it more this time around because I think Big Man's back in Europe, so they're going to try to get him ping-friendly gods, and that's going to be their game plan.
The Titans have changed, I will say. I would pretty much give them the Mercury, and there was another god meta. They were really good on that meta. And since they got nerfed, those gods, I think they have been maybe performing a little less, or maybe they are not performing as they used to. So right now, I will say we're pretty fine with the meta, and I think this is our meta, to be fair.
The meta has not really, I think the meta is still like wide open. I don't think there's like a solid set meta that everyone's doing. For our team, it's a little bit different. I know different teams like playing different things, but we have like a different way we're playing currently.
Yes, of course, the meta has been pretty solid right now. There has been ups and downs on the meta because on the first weeks of SPL, they were this double hunter thingy. Then it disappeared for a while. Then Artio became meta again, Cthulhu became meta again, and now we are seeing these double hunters again. So I will say there is no specific meta on the league right now, but most of the time you will see the same gods for the rest of the year.
Nice little talk with both Layers and Netrioid there to kind of get their minds behind both these teams and talking a lot about how the meta has shifted quite a bit since the first time that these guys, or since really the last couple of times these guys have faced off. They had a matchup all the way back in Masters, and then we had the 2-0 that went to the Kings about halfway through that phase with the Kings coming out on top there. But more than anything, I think that the Titans have found their own style of play within this own meta. You know, we've seen what the meta has developed into, but the Titans are still kind of doing their own things. I mean, they ran, what, a Bellona Poseidon, which was Poseidon solo and Bellona carry 3 games in a row. I believe they were able to, I believe they actually ended up falling to the bolts during that set, but still showing that they're trying to be at least unique within this new meta.
Yeah, so always fun to see what the Titans devise on day of, right? On week of. What version of the team are we going to see? Is it, hey, let's hyper-facilitate Paul? Is Paul going to get on one of his healers? Is SOT still playing the Ools and the Poseidons of the world? Is Layers back on his signature Camazots, or is he going back to the Osiris, the Erlang Shen? This is a very, very adaptable team. The Kings, the Titans, and even the Olympus Bolts, I would argue, at this level of, hey, whatever is good, we are capable of playing and at the highest level, and we know how to beat it as well. So always fun to watch these those three teams, and specifically when they play against each other, which is what we've got for this set. Camelot Kings up against the Tartarus Titans. I'm expecting a whole lot of standard bans, at least in Game 1. Generally, both of these teams use Game 1 as just data analysis. Start your download, figure out what the enemy team's up to. Once download's complete, then you start doing a little bit more of the targeted bans. You can bring out some of these goofier picks. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a whole lot of variety on those Guardians of the Soul lane. That might actually control a bit of what SOT is looking towards. I'm not well versed in like the Poseidon versus Jing Shen matchup, and that means SOT isn't, but I am well versed in Jing Shen in competitive play, and it's just super hard to kill. So if that's your strat, if you want to play things like the Uller, might not work up against variety.
And it's always fun to see teams like this with like two different styles of theory crafting going on. You know, the Kings are thinking of, you know, what is the most meta thing that we can go to win? What's going to win out the hardest in the jungle? What's going to win out the best in these dual lanes? And they're sticking to a lot of kind of the tier list style of play. Tartarus Titans are kind of doing a little bit of that, but they keep moving them around to these weird positions. That's why we saw Bellona carry for a little while out of CycloneSpin. Though that is Cyclone just kind of returning to his roots of solo lane back
Every
at that
6
point.
months, CycloneSpin goes through a phase of, I'm not playing Hunters. Anything but Hunters.
I'm just playing whatever I feel like playing at the time.
Usually it's like Hunbots. That has been the recurring theme for like the last 5 years. Cyclone will just hit a phase where he's like, you know, Hunbots probably is pretty good here. And it almost never is, but sometimes it wins.
He thinks that sometimes it's just how Cyclone goes. Picks and bans, though, for game number 1 between the Tartarus Titans and the Camelot Kings. We are sticking to still a lot of those meta bans. Freya and Ula, the first ones out. And then this Ola run. So both magical hunters that the Kings have started been flexing over towards, especially for a player like Netrioid. Between him and Stewart, we've been seeing a lot more of the magical hunters. Stewart from the over on the side of the Solar Scarabs. It's interesting to see the Tartarus Titans putting so much stock into just this one player.
So Netrioid will not have his 2 favorite magical hunters available. It's still very capable of playing the standard physical hunters as well. Things like the Jingwei, the Hachiman come to mind when I think of Netrioid. Generally, though, we've seen the answer from teams up against the Kings recently is trying to ban out BigManTingz. Big Man, more often than not, going back towards that Poseidon, back against the wall. He'll play things like the Kukulkan as well. The Kings have got no limits on BMT right now, so a couple of picks that have been comfortable to him still available might mean that we just see him waited out. Or, conversely, maybe you're concerned about the Titans going towards that Poseidon for SOT. You know that Tings is very capable of playing it. Could just utilize this second pick as a tertiary or quadriary ban up against the Titans. Is it quadriary? I don't know. Fourth ban.
I think it is. I remember I looked it up one day because there was that same question that came up, and now I honestly can't remember because that was like over a month ago at this point. But
yeah, any linguist in the chat can I don't know, let us know.
For sure. Yemoja will be that third ban, and that was when I was wondering which team was going to ban it, but it ended up being the Tartarus Titans. On the opposite side, Uller, the Morgan, and Chernobog taken away. It opens up for Khepri, Erlang, Shen on the Tartarus Titans, and Eset Osiris for the Camelot Kings. So still a little bit of flexibility on both those gods, whether the Osiris goes into the jungle over for CaptainTwig or in the solo lane for variety, and then Eset with a little bit of flex between that mid and the support role as well. You were wondering which of these players might pull out a healer. It's going to be Paul this time around on Hell.
Man, Paul warned me. When he saw the patch notes for TTK changes, he's like, healers are going to be good. And you know what? For a little while, like, he wasn't going towards them, and now that the Hell is coming back up, I believe Ven was one of the first ones to start playing it recently. Maybe seeing a bit more popularity for this pick, but looking at the composition built around this Hell already with just Erlang, Shen, and Khepri, whole lot of facilitation. Erlang Shen's going to carry you through the early game. Assuming that's in the jungle and assuming it's going to get like a Mannequin Scepter, you're probably not concerned for this Hell's ability to scale into the mid game. And then once the mid game starts up, that's when the 3v3 happens in mid. You're already healing, you already have cleanse or CC immunity, and now you're going to have a safety net ultimate Scarab's Blessing available to you. The dive potential onto this Hell is going to be very, very low in the absolute latest portions of this game. So early to mid game, you want to see the Kings get involved towards the center of the map, And now with this Ymir, you don't have any answers to the wall on the side of the Titans. Osiris can put out that pressure early on. If you are able to establish that pressure, Eset with Circle Protection is still the best confirmation tool in the entirety of SMITE. Nobody's out confirming on a Gold Fury. Nobody's out confirming on a Pyromancer. This is a draft from the Kings that has the potential to put pressure on Hell, but a timer on when that pressure can be put there.
Well, as far as the bans come out, Camelot Kings will take away, and it's so weird for me to say this, a couple of solo lane picks, because with Erlang Shen likely going into the jungle, Hell going to be going into the mid lane, of course, so that leaves open the question, okay, well, where would the Poseidon have gone, considering SOT has had a strong performance on it? Camelot Kings will take him away from that pick. And I'll be honest, even with the Tartarus Titans picking the Erlang Shen, I'm not 100% convinced that this one is going to be going over into the jungle. Could see some flex, maybe if CycloneSpin gets a little bit frisky in the duo lane, but more often than not, we will likely see that one go over to layers. And in response, Tartarus Titans take at least a solo lane pick of their own RDO band away, and the Chiron, which is something that Netrioid has been flexing towards a lot more often.
Yeah, it seems the Kings agree with you. They are saying this is Erlang Shen in the jungle, and for the most part recently, that is where we have seen him. Ever since the minor rework, no longer having knock-up on that turtle form has really hampered his ability to be that primary initiator for your team, so you don't really want him in the solo or in support nearly as much as you once did. So Poseidon and Ravana both targeted from the Kings towards the Titan solo laner. SOT gonna have to dig a little bit deeper into his own god pool. Still has the potential to go towards just the standard warriors if he so chooses. The majority of them still available, as King Arthur is taken for the Camelot Kings. Variety said, I'm not handshaking today. I want to bring action early on. And King Arthur, one of the highest pressure soul laners you can lock in.
Especially with those changes to Glad Shield a couple of patches ago, making him a very potent solo laner. Notably, Bellona still available if SOT does want to go to a traditional warrior. That'd give him something that he can try and fight back against the King Arthur, maybe sustain up in lane decently against him. Bring some team fight pressure as well. The disarm good against the Osiris in the late game fights. We still haven't seen what Netrioid wants to go for the Kings. He's holding on to his pick until the very end. Kind of got the pick of the litter.
Excuse me.
As far as... All right, well, they're being weird.
No, that has got to be...
That's Cyclone, isn't it? No,
well,
that could be SOT.
That could be SOT.
Do you even know who
okay,
you're fighting?
That's Cyclone.
So SOT's still a solo then.
I think it might be Hell solo, and I know that's sacrilegious to say.
I mean,
with,
we
with
saw
Paul
it for a while
there.
in Season 8.
Yeah, I think you definitely want the Hell in solo. Scylla just gets absolutely blasted by King Arthur, right? Like, that's just how it goes down.
Death.
Damage output, sure, you could throw up like the Sentinel,
weird.
walk up, crush, then teleport away, but Cripple from King Arthur makes it pretty difficult for her to even action in that lane. Whereas Hell, you can go Warlock Staff immediately into Breastplate of Valor, and then you've got similar boxing potential and self-sustain. So I think we are looking at a Bellona ADC, Erlang Shen in the jungle, Scylla in mid, and we know Paul Scylla just goes absolutely crazy.
Pretty nuts.
And then SOT, the only untested with Hell in the soul lane.
So not too wild a competition for the Tartarus Titans, at least. If we would have seen this comp with any other team, we're sitting here scratching our head. Really gonna be a little strange. We are being informed that this is likely gonna be SOT for the Scylla though, so now definitely a little bit stranger even for the Tartarus Titans. We've seen the Poseidon solo. You're talking about how the Scylla and the King Arthur matchup is gonna go.
I just can't imagine it's good. I just can't imagine. I mean, you're not allowed to spin, right, if you're King Arthur. Sickham's gonna connect every single time. But outside of that, King Arthur should have the same level of burst, is going to be tankier, less susceptible to ganks. It depends on how much presence we see from layers over towards the soul lane. Like 9 turns Blessing into I'm a Monster is going to do a whole lot of damage at level 5 regardless. And if you can establish a lead on Scylla, eventually she will hit an inflection point where she just walks up, crushes wave, and it dies as she walks away. And it's not so much about the boxing potential in lane. But those early levels are just going to be incredibly volatile for one of the 2 people in that lane, and it's Scylla.
It's not going to be fun for Scylla, especially with an Osiris jumping over to that lane anytime. And we know that CaptainTwig is willing to get involved when there is a squishy mage in solo. We saw it last time around that they played. So Camelot Kings, I mean, it feels like pressure is the name of the game for them. Bellona, sure, going to get some decent pressure in the early game in that dual lane. As we're scoring off against a Heimdallr, I think it was Barracuda we had in for a post-game interview after their matchup against the Tartarus Titans. And Barra was just sitting there going, yeah, I had a lot of fun not knowing what I was going against, assuming that it was Bellona, and I just got to sit there and wait for the wave, throw a couple of auto attacks. Oh no, I'm disarmed. wait for a couple more auto attacks if the block stacks aren't up. So going to be a very passive lane as far as Netrioid is concerned for the Camelot Kings. So then it comes to Mifflin for the Tartarus Titans. Where is their win con in this game to find a win in game 1?
I mean, their late game team fight is not poor whatsoever. You're going to have really high damage output, decent sustain as well. Khepri should make it difficult for the dive of the Camelot Kings to actually hit pay dirt. Osiris, Ymir, King Arthur all mitigated by that Scarab's Blessing. You can deal with a lot of that CC chaining as well just from the cleanse from Hell. So I think that throughout the early game, you're playing through the duo. Bellona should get pressure up against this Heimdallr. Otherwise, it's all about that late game team fight. And then from there, it's a DPS race. And well, Scylla and Hell, double mage composition, should win the DPS race, but then your siege is so weak. Like, how are you taking down towers if you're the Titans?
That's because...
Yeah, I mean, they don't have a hunter. They don't even have a magical hunter.
I can't even say they really have a carry because Cyclone's been going full tank Bellona every time that he's played. He hasn't been going for like a crit or like this boxing style Bellona.
I mean, double polys maybe? I mean, double polys can make short work of a tower. Poly's been coming back. Scylla, a very good poly user. Hell, a little bit less so, but one that we've seen from Ben in the past. Curious composition, man. The Tartarus Titans, they've thrown me for the loop. Their win condition is to kill the enemy and then the Titan.
It's just got to be all down to the team fight for the Tartarus Titans up against the Camelot Kings. Who's going to come out in game number 1? We'll throw it over to Dave and Gore to find out.
Titans versus Kings. What a way to start off this weekend in the SPL. And Gore, we are officially starting our second rotation. Everyone has already played each other once. We are now playing the opposing team for the second time this phase. And so I think it's unique to be able to look back at the beginning of the phase, see where the team started, see where they are now. Kings actually in a very different scenario. They're playing with BigManTingz on ping over in Europe, of course. Tartarus Titans have gone through some stylistic changes. And maybe none more so than this here, Gore.
That's a nice way of saying it. Just some stylistic changes.
Well, look, Sot is
accurate.
hell-bent on not playing standard stuff in solo. And Scylla is about as non-standard as it gets nowadays.
And Cyclone seems hell-bent on playing gods he played in Season 2 exclusively.
Right. and you know what? And this speaks to Cyclone. Or to Sot, rather. I think this could work for Sot.
Yes. Oh, no,
you know what I mean? My initial reaction is that I think that I have a feeling that this could work for SOT.
After the masterclass on Ullr that we got last week, I don't think there's anything he can play over there that I'm going to doubt.
Oh my goodness, but the Kings just over in the duo lane, that's where they're losing all their pressure right now. Netrioid has been rooted and damaged by Cyclone and Aror. Basically on cooldown.
And you know, it's worth talking about with CycloneSpin here because we're seeing a lot of warriors over there. It's fun to like poke fun at it because I think the desk even said like he's doing anything but playing hunters, anything that he can pull over there.
What is Twig gonna do though?
Die?
Hopefully walk out. Oh, the body blocks from BigManTingz. I think enough to keep CaptainTwig alive. One auto attack makes its way in, and CaptainTwig falls for first blood. Man, the Titans score all over the place. A couple autos, a little bit of damage away from getting first blood.
But as much as I want to focus in on that, I mean, that one's just a good classic gank. It's the duo lane still that has my attention because as fun as it is to poke fun at them for having this eclectic god pool over here, CycloneSpin is the most varied competitive player. He has the most gods played in competitive because he played solo.
Right.
Then he transitioned over to Hunter. And now he's playing those gods over here again. It's obviously working out for him. And Bellona, to an extent, I mean, yes, you don't have the range. You've got a little more CC. I anticipate he's probably still going to go pretty bruisery because that's what we've been seeing out of his builds. But Bellona is really into auto attack stuff, things like that. Like there were periods of time, you go back in metas, I'm talking season 2, 3, where the build for Bellona and the build for a hunter were damn near the exact same.
Right.
Like you were playing her in a very similar fashion, and at the time she was incredibly tanky as well, so you were able to dash in, you use your block stacks to help you against people like that have higher damage, and then you just win the fight because you've been able to tank so much in the process. And I think that he's going to be able to provide a lot to the team. And the only thing, again, that they're lacking here for me is going to be that ranged physical damage.
Yeah.
It's going to be nice, that stuff hits harder when it comes down to towers, shredding through Phoenixes, things like that. Really helpful in team fights, having at least one person who's not going to be in there but still dealing a good chunk of damage. But I think I said the same thing last week, and they were still able to make it work. So I think Layers and CycloneSpin here are going to be big.
Oh, I wonder if you know, for Titans fans, I wonder if it's not hard in a sense of like they have really good games, really bad games. I wonder if it's hard, like stressful being a Titans fan. You know what I mean? Like, here's me, an average Titans fan, and I'll wait and see if Layers is able to grab a gank on a Variety. No, he's not. You're a bit stressed if you're a Titans fan based on that, but Variety survives the gank. Though, a nice root from Sot into the pin. Waiting for I'm a Monster to come out. Won't be there, though. I wonder if it's stressful for Titans fans. You're like, you know what, I'm relaxed. It's a nice Friday afternoon. I'm excited to watch some good Titans Smite. And then you tune in and Sot's playing solo lane, and CycloneSpin's on Bellona duo. I think at first it might have been stressful. But I think the Titans have bought themselves a little bit of leeway. Can Variety do so as well? I'm a Monster still there, but Sot holds on to it, and Variety will end up walking away and live through the initial pressure from Layers. And now CaptainTwig a chance to return the favor. Blue buff up. Maybe a chance for an invade from Twig, but it'll get dropped by Layers.
I'm not sure Layers, twice there, walks over a ward. Like, Variety knew what was happening. He knew what was coming for him. Each time able to disengage. Ward's been, I believe, replaced now as well, so you're going to have that extra vision. Same thing for Twig, walks right over a ward. So the solo laner's in that position, but it is surprising to me. I mean, very similar to you, for a guy who, you know, go back to when he was playing Poseidon in the solo lane, was willing to throw out his abilities just for the sake of it because his cooldown was so ridiculous. Holding on to I'm a Monster there, like, might not have gotten the kill. It probably would have been one of those circumstances where it was like right there. A Variety gets out with a sliver of health. But it would have been a TKO, right? Like, you would have forced his teleport to go on cooldown, probably forced something else out of him, maybe been able to get more of an advantageous position in lane and potentially go for a blue buff invade. I'm kind of surprised to see them play it as lax as they did.
Agreed. Ultimately, it doesn't change around all that much, but a potential chance for a kill onto Variety. Paul over in mid opts for the first item, Book of Thoth, forgoes the starter item.
For now.
For now, right? Eventually later on in this build, expect to maybe see it. So healing, the name of the game here for Paul. Layers, of course, will have some with the 9 turns blessing, but of course with Helgor, you always have to talk about the cleanse. What can you cleanse out? Big burst heal really from both of the mids, of course, through the circle protection for BigManTingz. Paul has got his AoE heal as well. And so healing facilitation between Paul and BigManTingz should be an interesting story throughout the game.
Yeah, you know, Tingz is going to be a lot more conditional, as you said, around the circle of protection. You've got good anti-heal from Twig, so that's going to be helpful on that ult whenever you're able to get ideally multiple people.
We got all of the Kings.
Yeah, they're all coming in. I don't think they're going to be able to get here for Layers. They'll at least steal an offering away. But it's that question, like, you know, Layers right there, using the 9 turns blessing with Twig in the neighborhood if he was going for the fight, able to kind of shut down that healing. Same thing for Paul. But you mentioned the cleanse. And I think it's important to mention it on Paul. I think it's important to then mention the one on Scarab's Blessing as well, because it's easy to overlook it. Scarab's Blessing, for most purposes, is just used as a res, but having a cleanse on top of that just feels really good. And so there's a lot of ways to get out of CC, to stay alive against the Kings here, and keep yourselves going. And like, let's talk about frustration, man. Like, Bellona has a little bit of in-kit healing, maybe not enough that we're really going to, like, talk heavily about it in the middle of a team fight.
Sure.
But there's some. Layers has a heal. Paul's going to be team healing. Auror's going to bring someone back to life. Like, this is just going to be a very annoying to kill Titans roster.
Yeah, absolutely. Going to be obnoxious. On the flip side, Gore, one way you can help kill the opposing team is just get more damage on early, and that's what Netrioid is looking for. Dominance. First item on the Heimdallr. Now, if we see builds change up over in Hunter, like, Dominance First is far from absurd. We have seen Dominance First once or twice, but very, very unique still from what we've seen here as of late. Of course, you get the additional penetration on the basic attacks, 15%. And maybe that is a direct result of the fact that you're landing against CycloneSpin, Berserker Shield early for Cyclone. Maybe that dominance just helps that damage stick a little extra.
Yeah, I think it's a matchup thing more than anything, right? You know, we're used to seeing, for a while there, we were seeing a lot of Ichabal, where it was like boxing matches between hunters. And I think that makes a lot of sense, where it was like, cool, I think I can beat you. You're probably not going to be able to take on a Bellona and be widely successful. I'm not seeing a lot of 1v1s happening when Bellona has an ult and a dash that can get her out.
Good taunt in from Layers this time. Crush off the mark. So Variety will live. You feel for Layers. We've seen some 9 turns blessings fly, a couple towards Variety, a couple to try to disengage throughout the jungle. None of them really connected for that much pressure. But he's trying, and that's what you want to do. You got Mannequin Scepter early on this Erlang Shen. Let's get active, put some damage out on the map. This hasn't converted into first blood just yet. As CaptainTwig has felt very reactive, rotating around, almost secondary to Layers, at least matching him in farm though. And so both junglers almost keeping pace with one another in the first 10 minutes.
Yeah, not too surprising to see. I think that both of these teams, specifically I will say the Kings though, don't get as aggressive early on. They can absolutely find like kills in the first 5, but they're a team that's playing for the 18-minute mark and then onward, right? They're not necessarily looking for anything insane early in this matchup, especially after the 9-5. Like, they were playing for the late game before it was hard to get kills early on. Now, it's harder to get those kills anyway. So I like and appreciate how much that they are, again, kind of, I think, as you said, keeping pace with each other, farming well, focusing on that. Variety's been doing, I think, well enough. Now it's going to be tanky in both regards. I like the Genji's first item, allows him to be a little bit more of a bully. And to come in here and still tank up because of the sovereignty, someone like Layers.
Oh, good wall from Genetics. First of many, I'm sure we'll get this game. But Layers able to escape, and Aror makes the big play, dashes back towards mid. Man, Scarab's blessing, huh? That'll do it to you. And Aror is on point with it this time. Should have been first blood for the Kings, but Aror had something else in mind.
I'm telling you, we're just going to see that. And then you have to imagine in certain circumstances later on in the game, Titans, they get a little low, they back up, they heal up, they come back in. And even though the healing's been nerfed when it's out of combat, it's still going to feel good for Paul. He's going for a cheeky run around. I've never seen a Hell go for a play like that just because of the mobility, but now he's got backup.
Could be a chase here from the Tartarus Titans. Taunt
taunt.
in onto Genetics. I'm a monster, gobbles up Genetics. And Pyromancer goes to the Kings. But Genetics a bit left out to dry, and the Titans reinitiate and find first blood. Maybe equalize things a bit between the Pyro and the kill.
Still have to be a little careful on the disengage. A lot of the utility, a lot of the strengths they had going into that may be gone. Specifically Scarab's Blessing. But no one's too low. Paul, as well, even going to be able to walk away without having to use his beads just yet.
Paul, remember, can't sustain. Layers chasing down CaptainTwig, who's got Lord of the Afterlife. Spear ball no good from BigManTingz. And it looks like everyone will be able to leave. God, look at that little bit, I mean, I say a little bit, but decent chunk of healing. Maybe just under a third of Paul's health bar sustains up throughout those fights. Camelot Kings nearly grabbed themselves a kill in mid. But already some of that health sustain making a big difference. Fully stacked Book of Thoth, Warlock staff getting ready to go as well. And Paul has got kind of mid-game mindset here. Get these items stacked up and really hit the power spikes in a couple items.
And honestly, I like this, right? I think Hell, you know, one of the biggest reasons I'm a proponent of Breastplate on her, cooldown feels good, but really you like the mana as well. She burns through that mana bar. So Thoth immediately makes that feel a little bit better. Warlock's staff feels good already because you've got a really good base stats that just build on each other. You're going to get a little tankier. You're going to have more health for yourself. And what I'm seeing in this is Paul, you know, next item, if he wants, either he can pick up the starter that he skipped earlier for more cooldown reduction, things like that, or he could go into something like the Breastplate still. More mana, more heals, more tankiness that allows more survival, that allows a Hell to exist, which gives you more heals in the fight. And it kind of feeds off of itself, right? It builds into itself, plays into itself, I think, incredibly well. So I'm going to keep my eyes on his build.
Ooh, Netrioid and Cyclone battling it out. Gotta be a kill on a CycloneSpin here. Eagles rally ready to go, but the Camelot Kings have sent 3 to the left side of the map. My goodness! Cyclone is so tanky. Scarab's Blessing again saves the life of a Tartarus Titan, and this time it is CycloneSpin. Gore, you mentioned it. The healing plays a difference in this case. It sustains up just enough for Cyclone to live.
The last time I think Scourge healing, like, mattered would have been, like, legitimately years and years ago. I mean, 5 at this point? It's not often that you get to see it be a huge difference maker, but it's enough sustain. You get a Scarab's Blessing as well. Good. Again, on the cleanse, you get movement speed. It's just a good ult. And it gets him out of there. I appreciate seeing this from CycloneSpin. And now, I mean, yeah, you mentioned it, but going tanky, he's building the same way he would if he was in solo lane. He's got the Berserker Shield, he's got the Sovereignty, he's going for what I'm going to assume is a Frostbound Hammer. And so he's going to be slowing people down, he's going to be chasing them, he's going to be playing Bellona the exact way we're used to playing Bellona or seeing Bellona played. And again, he's got solo lane history, so it's not like this is really that foreign to him anyway.
Right, yeah, no, it does feel like a nice synergistic build for CycloneSpin so far. And Aurora's been on point. 2 out of 2 on the Scarab's Blessings have stumped the Camelot Kings just shy of grabbing their first kill of the game. Emperor's Armor early in the kit for Aror. Dash away a little bit of pressure from BigManTingz over in mid. But Gore, you know, normally when we see Emperor's Armor, it is... well, maybe like mid to early late game when we're actually like sieging up towers, things like that. Maybe Aror getting the sense that the Kings are either going to be diving them or Tartarus Titans want to be doing some diving.
Maybe a little bit of column A and B, right?
Yeah, why not?
You're taking both. I see this as a team, especially like 14 minutes on. This is the, instead of getting like a sovereignty for your team, you already have one, right, for CycloneSpin, but you're still early on after a Thebes thinking, okay, what do we have to deal with? Well, I'm a little more worried about the Osiris and the Heimdallr than I am immediately the Eset. And I guess King Arthur is technically going to fall into the first category because physical, but like I'm not really worried about the damage coming from the Eset and the King Arthur right now.
Right.
And so I'm thinking I want physical props.
Surely Aror dies here, right? He's got to get stunned in the wall. Man, he's already...
He won't die, and don't call me Shirley. But
Sorry, Gore. I'd never call you Shirley. He didn't even have to use a Scarab's Blessing. Still one for layers here. See, these individual picks. So far in the early game, when we talk about how Scarab's Blessing is so detrimental to individual pick comps, this is what we mean. I'm a monster, no good onto variety. It was a slight pull onto the Gold Fury by the Camelot Kings. Titans group up as 4 or 5, depending on how wide your grouping may be, over here on the left side of the map. Bit of aggression from CycloneSpin onto Netrioid, but Aror lagging in on the end of this fight. CycloneSpin will take plenty of damage, but always going to be some safety when Aror is nearby. Looks like Paul and Lair score. They're going to pull a sneaky Pyromancer and grab that one for the Titans, and the gold lead is equalized.
I mean, that's a huge pickup for him, right? You consent to, you know that Layers is going to be the one that's bringing a lot of the shred, a lot of damage potential to the team. So you just go for something like that. You've got Paul. Like, Paul doesn't even need to be tanky in order to make something like that work. You just have to have the healing, and they've got that in spades. So feels really good to get the objective immediately. Feels even better. The Kings had to play carefully around objectives because normally when you see Eset, you see Circle Protection, and I will still say one of the best secures that you can have in the game. Really good for your team, really good for objectives, things like that. But with I'm a Monster, honestly, even Crush out there, it becomes a little more risky, right? You're still theoretically going to be able to outdamage it, better time it than what Sot will be able to do. But just knowing that there's another huge burst ultimate available that can just swipe something out from underneath you, the Kings have to play carefully. So I thought when Sot used that, that was going to be enough. Crush is something you have to worry about a little bit, but not anywhere near as much as the ultimate. Yeah. And so I'm surprised to see that they kind of pulled back off of the Fury there. That gives an opening, for the Titans to get that Pyromancer and maybe even try to pick some fights. Sot's been spending more time in mid than his own lane over the last couple of minutes.
Yeah, Gore, I'm excited for the Circle Protection I'm a Monster battle, not only for kill confirm, but objective confirm throughout this game. What a dream that would be. We're like 30 more minutes into this game, one more Fire Giant determines the outcome, and it's a battle between Tings and Sot for out confirm. And then what it is the dot from Aror that ends up stealing it, something like that. Totally not in the conversation at all. Those are the types of things I look forward to, though. So maybe we'll get moments like that. Definitely around the first Gold Fury, when things have been as even as they have been for the first 17 minutes. The smaller objectives early in the game feel a bit bigger, a bit more important. Bracer is down for the Titans. They'll clear up these Oracles. And for now, the game plan for the Titans seems to be try to find a pick, make that Gold Fury easier, and the Kings just trying to back away and not allow the Titans to either find a pick or pull the Fury quietly. This is a 5 versus 5 grouping, Gore, and the Titans just ping-ponging back and forth, looking for an overextension, but haven't found one.
And at this point, though, you've managed to get the Kings to back off and put yourselves in a favorable position. You don't even need to secure this, you just have to get them to take the bait.
Kings, though, being reeled in, yes, but haven't fully taken the bait just yet. Crush is down. I'm a monster plus Crush equals confirm of the Gold Fury for the Tartarus Titans. And now in the back of the fight, CaptainTwig has helped deal some good damage to Paul, who's got the Scarab's blessing on his head. But Aror sent to the nether by Netrioid, and down he will crash, and finally, the Camelot Kings grab themselves a kill in this game, but it comes at the cost of a Gold Fury, and the Titans grab themselves the first big objective.
I mean, that's just a classic Smite trade, right? I'll gladly die as a support to get the Gold Fury. It's worth more than my life. Losing the tower, though, makes it so that we're back closer to even than we were even before that. I think that was a really good play from the Titans, but the Kings, they've just been farming incredibly well this entire game. I mean, earlier on, before we had the first blood, they were slowly pulling, 500, 600 to 1,000 gold in their favor, and then they lose it because of first blood, and they, equalize because they got that pyromancer, things like that. And then they slowly start to build up another like 800 to 1,000, and then they lose it because they lose a fight. Things like that, and now again you lose the Gold Fury, but then you've built up just enough gold and you were able to get just enough off the back of it. Now you're pretty much going to be coasting into this. Pyromancer's not going to be up for a little over a minute now, so it's really just the FG to fight over if they so want. And there's also a whole slew of things that I realized in that last fight that make the Titans even more obnoxious to fight against.
Yep.
And a lot of it comes in the form of a slow, because Crush, it slows. Hell, it Dark Stance 2, slows. Hell, Dark Stance 3, or Light Stance 2, cleanse, right? Feels really irritating to go against. Khepri has a cleanse, then the Abduct. CycloneSpin, he's going to be slowing you. Like, there's a lot of slows, and like, it's one of those things, especially with the new classifications of CC coming up there. Slows are not something you feel or want to have to use your beads against. Honestly, I don't like having to build relics against it, but sometimes it's necessary, and I like that genetics has gone that way. But it's just like, they're just frustrating, because it's not like, oh, hey, I can easily get out of this one. Like, if I get stunned, I'm popping beads, I'm running away.
Yep.
If I get slowed, I think I can get away, right? It like lulls you into almost a false sense of security, and also is just frustrating.
Agreed.
And I think that the Titans here are going to be able to capitalize on that against the Kings.
Camelot Kings.
I might even want a wing blade.
Yeah.
Like,
Look.
I'm starting to think about it. Like, I really don't like them.
Look, yeah, with the sheer amount that you're going up against, would be far from a bad idea. Pyromancer respawns, though. Remember, the objectives have been split, not one for the other across the map. So we're just going to be shifting back and forth every 5 minutes or so. This time, Titan's a bit quicker on the pull. And wouldn't you guess it, Gore, at 21.5 minutes. The Pyromancer brings us right back to even. And level discrepancies have not been overwhelming both, quote, hunters. We'll call them the duo lane, both ADCs between CycloneSpin and Netrioid. Maintain level parity, just the one level lead for Aror. I mean, you're talking half a level to a level, if there is any difference in gold. Not much worse off than that. Haven't seen much from BigManTingz or Paul this game outside of just some utility added to the team, but big power spikes hitting mid. Similar builds outside of Soul Gem for one, Book of Thoth for the other. But both have the Soul Reaver, both have the Ob Shard. And so the big bursty damage score really starting to come online. But for the Titans, they've got that twofold. Very similar build for SOT as well. So big burst magical damage. Something, if you're the Kings or their fans, hopefully able to itemize against.
And I think a build like this, we've been seeing a lot of Spirit Balls connect. I think this build is going to just make those look even harder. They're going to hit even more, and it's going to be fun to watch.
CycloneSpin dodges
like that.
it out. Yep. And it's over. No, Netrioid was winning that 1v1. I mean, dominant Aussie, Silver Branch, kin size.
He better be, right?
Yeah, he better be. CycloneSpin, over a longer period of time, with some help from the team, probably able to feel okay against Netrioid. Bulwark of Hope most recently. And teleport in from CycloneSpin, and the gas pedal has suddenly been pressed. Here is your confirmed battle. Fire Giant at 23 minutes. SOT and BigManTingz gonna rotate into this fight, but the FG has been dropped in a 3-man taunt from Layers. Pulls in the Camelot Kings, and Paul grabs the first kill of the fight. A CycloneSpin dives into the backline, and the rest of the Titans now rallying behind their, quote, ADC. And maybe back to the FG they go.
I love the way they play that. Not only do you get the backup, there's a focus on Desat because the Fire Giant's low. Get rid of him, you get rid of the Secure. But then Cyclone just splits up. I mean, look at him again, playing exactly the way that you want him to if he was in solo right now. And I think that he's giving up a lot of space. With Twig gone, this is a hard fight for the Kings to get into.
Wow, the Titans drop the FG. Uh-oh, BigManTingz deletes Aror, and suddenly this fight is equalized. Scarab's Blessing remained. Aror not able to counter out the big burst CycloneSpin, wishes he had that Scarab's Blessing. Actually, Titans back away. So that was a winning fight for the Titans for a moment there, Goran. Might be, but the Bifrost from Netrioid's enough. And thin margins don't result in a difference here. Camelot Kings lose one, then the Camelot Kings take one, and the Fire Giant remains on the map.
But you lose Aror for Twig. Now, I will say, I think that at this point, Aror with Scarab's Blessing is worth a ton on the field, but the capabilities that the Kings are missing without Twig to kind of lead the way, go for some of the jungler plays, right? Going for the slows that Osiris can bring, having a really effective tether, jumping in, dissecting the team fight, getting to the carries, things like that. Well, since he's missing those, or since he was just missing because he was dead, it ends up, I want to say maybe balancing out. Like you said, that Scarab's Blessing going down. It was a weird miss. I didn't even catch where Paul was, but no cleanse coming out for Aror, so he wasn't able to use the ult because he was CC'd so heavily. Those are moments that you're really going to need to, or want to see the change in, to make sure that ult needs to get used in team fights, or else the Titans are going to find themselves in a severe lacking position.
Now we're doing it again. Titans will pull the FG in the face of 5 members of the Camelot Kings. This is a double Eagles rally from CycloneSpin, then a taunt on the back of the fight from Layers, but Layers needs the healing. I'm a Monster reached over the wall, but didn't grab much of anything. Scarab's Blessing down onto Layers, and it's needed, but won't get procced. Layers walks away, but CaptainTwig times it to perfection, and a Lord of the Afterlife shuts down Layers. SOT falls as well.
Yeah, first time around, I think that was just the appropriate call. The Titans were playing it well. This time around, the Kings were not only more well-equipped, but things just went wide. I mean, you called it out, the I'm a Monster, not able to get a lot of damage out there. That really is a huge impact. Meanwhile, Layers did get hit by the Circle of Protection. There was a lot of capability to chase them down. The Kings play patiently. They wait to make sure that the damage onto Layers doesn't proc that Scarab's Blessing. I mean, they just played that so well in retaliation to what the Titans were trying to do. And that was a fight the Titans wanted. I think that they just pulled the trigger a little too fast. They didn't have the relic usage, or relics, period, and then usage that they wanted, I think, going into it. And so I think they just bit off a little more than they could chew.
Yeah, I mean, look, the Titans, they just straight up pull the FG. We don't see that often.
No.
You will normally look for a pick, a fight, something like that. Speaks to the confidence maybe the Titans around their team fight. But I think the walls from Genetic, very dynamic in that fight, continually blocking off a couple members of the Titans. Auror's got to use the Scarab's Blessing early. That'll give the Kings not only both towers on the right side of the map, also the Pyromancer, and a nice big pocket full of gold, as the Camelot Kings have roared back in this game and really taken control. Netrioid has really impressed me so far this game, Gore. Not an easy lane going up against CycloneSpin. The itemization changes up a bit, and it's looked effective from Netrioid at 21,000 damage, top in the game at 27 minutes. And that's not going to slow down. The attack speed, the tank shred, physical penetration style of build for Netrioid just gets better. Now you got a tier 2 OD bow. I'm excited to see what this Heimdallr can do under Phoenix Sieges, helping out the Kings maybe close out of game 1.
And you want to talk about tower killer. I mean, every single one of those axes is just going to chunk objectives. And even more importantly, you know, you're looking at Paul. Paul's got a lot of health. What eats through health chin size? You look at CycloneSpin, you look at Aurora, you had mentioned the pin, but that plus the health bar shred, it's just going to help against 3 targets over there. Layers and Sot aren't really the targets on the side of the Titans for Netrioid. No, he's going to absolutely take them if he can get them. But I think the CC chain that has been happening on everybody else has just, oh my god, has just been perfect. That was 300. I mean, massive swings from this Heimdallr. And like you said, with the attack speed he's going, even only the tier 2 on the Odivo, the speed of which he's going to burn through the not only them, but tanks is just going to be impressive for the Kings.
Bumba's hammer now finished up for Paul. Titans are going to need every rotation of those cooldowns and every bit of that healing in order to stand up against the Camelot Kings and their Titan, potential Titan, but Phoenix Siege for now. BigManTingz has done well with his circle of protections. And Gore, if we're talking about game-changing I'm a Monsters when Paul is on a team, surely, oh man, I called you Shirley again. Definitely we're talking about Paul, right? Playing the Scylla with the game-changing potential on the I'm a Monster, but it's SOT this time. The potential remains the same, but it's not Paul who's on it. Paul playing facilitator this game for the rest of his team.
And I like the way that they're playing this. Trebuchet actually built up for the Titans as well if they wanted to try and balance this out, but I like that they're going for the long-range damage. Paul can just poke it out, slow people down. It is going to take a little while. I mean, Trebuchet is up against Phoenix's. It's free damage, but it's not a lot of damage. But at this point, especially at this pace, it's going to be half health by the time the Kings even get in there. They only have 40 seconds to work with on the power play as well. So they have to decide how they're doing it, but look at Netrioid. They're going over towards mid.
Wow, instant rotation from the Camelot Kings. Variety considering a dive, but you're right, Glor, with 30 seconds left on the FG buff, minion waves, you might get one more chance, but it looks like the Camelot Kings okay with what they've got. That said, Variety has teleport, so Variety channeling is back doesn't mean that much. But now the body language of the rest of the Camelot Kings likely tells us that we'll do another Fire Giant dance. So all things considered, Gore, yes, big gold spool for the Camelot Kings.
Yes.
With that Fire Giant. I mean, you're talking 7,000 or so gold in the lead of the Titans. And all of it in the last few minutes of this game. But could have been a lot worse map state-wise. All three Phoenixes remain on the map, and the Titans at least still have their base intact. You're not dealing with fire minions. Gives you the opportunity to step out and defend the next fire if you're feeling confident enough in the fight.
You know, one thing, and I think I tweeted this out yesterday. Time's crazy. But it was, I think I even told you about this yesterday when I was talking about it. I was looking at the numbers between Gold Furies and Fire Giants, like the difference between Phase 1, Phase 2,
right,
after one full round robin, because that's what we did in Phase 1, so it seemed like it would be like equitable numbers. They were pretty much the same. It was one less Fire Giant so far this phase. Well, up till now, that one Fire Giant we saw makes it all equal, but that's also one more gameplay than they had.
You mean total FGs taken?
Total FGs taken throughout Phase 1 and Phase 2.
Which were 2 4-week periods, right?
Yeah, and then it was like 21-ish less Gold Furies. And
yeah,
so that,
no
so it was one of those things, again, where it, like, you know, the early game impact, that's where it changed. But right here, this is where the Kings are used to it, right? You know, that first FG we're used to seeing be the tower clear. If you're lucky, you get a Phoenix. If you're, you know, half lucky, I guess, you get half a Phoenix. And that's where the Kings are at. But this EFG is still incredibly important. The Kings somehow, 32 minutes into the game, have all 6 towers standing.
Yep.
If the Titans get this, they've got a lot of work to do ahead of them.
The Kings have 5.9999. No, wait, the other way.
5.00001
right towers remaining.
But it's still there.
But it's still there. It's still not down to totally 5. So Aror gets walled off by genetics. Titans realizing that as far as map state goes, this is probably the best it's going to get. All 3 Phoenixes exposed, but none of them down. You don't have fire minions to deal with. And so if you are going to step up, especially for an enhanced Fire Giant, this may just have to be the fight. This corridor right here has been wall city for genetics. Just dropping them and forcing one of the overextended, or maybe just extended members of the Titans to get just a bit nervous. That said, the ebb and flow of the battle sends Aror forward, and the Pyromancer pulled by the Titans. A relatively small prize that you're not going to want to die for. And Gore, now we are ebbing a bit, and the Camelot Kings regain control of the Fire Giant pit.
I like this, though. Again, Pyromancer should be easy to confirm. Pyromancers, like you said, you don't want to die over it. You want to play this very carefully. And I think if you're the Titans, you learned your lesson last time around. Although this time, I mean, look at the relics. Everyone that needs beads has beads. You've got sprints online, shells online. The only thing you're missing is that bracer from Aror. Ults are all available. And, you know, the same can be said for the Kings, but the Kings were more equipped during that last FG fight. This time around, I think the Titans will at least be able to retaliate a little bit better to the aggression from the Kings. Assuming they don't get caught out. I mean, a good 1v1, admittedly, it's CycloneSpin and Twig, so that's not going to make a big difference, but isolating someone like Paul or Sot here takes away a ton of damage from the Titans.
I mean, this is the point in the game where you draft a Scylla for, right? I mean, full build, the ability to delete anyone.
Yeah, theoretically, one crush is going to do a lot of damage.
Right, but Netrioid has played so safe, so defensively, in a good way, right, as you would want your Hunter to, but while still finding space to deal top damage in the game. BigManTingz has positioned very effectively as well. Now, Sot has done a lot of damage. It's a damage battle between Netrioid and SOT. I wonder if at some point Sot starts to get a bit creative with his positioning. Now, you don't want to get caught out, but every once in a while, Gore, you'll see like a little behind the fire giant wrap, you know, a little behind the pyromancer wall, just to see if you can get a Sikkim crush, I'm a monster combo. But Sot has had to play very defensively here because, you know, think about it. One stray wall from Genetics, that's lights out for the Scylla, and at this point in the game, that might just be game over.
This has been the weirdest. So just watching Sot on cooldown, Sentinel thrown behind him, he'll run up towards the FG pit, kind of get the lay of the land, and then immediately pop the Sentinel and dash all the way back. And it is worth mentioning because Sentinel does act as a ward, and you know now level 20 is going to have a wider range than it does at you know levels 1 through 4.
Yep.
And so it is important to know that he does have extra vision available if necessary, but he's using his getaway.
See, I'm thinking like a moment like that had a connected big difference maker. Yes, 3-man taunt from Layers, but he has got to get out because the Kings had initiated on the Erlang Shen. 9 turns Blessing now down. Is that enough of an advantage for the Kings to want to pull the Fire Giant? Yes, but how confident should you be? You can buy enough time if you're the Titans for Layers' ultimate to come back up. A bit of a wash. For now, a small advantage to the Kings.
I wanted to say that's a lot of time to try and buy here, but honestly, doesn't seem like it's going to be too difficult. I mean, at least a minute should be pretty easy to pick up.
You know what I want?
What do you want?
Well, I mean, it's a very bad play, to be clear, but just to add a little dynamic to this, I want CycloneSpin to go back, start up the Trebuchet, and teleport back to this fight, just to get something pushing.
Something going.
On one side of the map, because neither team has a risk right now that is requiring them to go anywhere. Yes, technical minion advantage on left, so eventually those will hit the Phoenix line of the Titans.
There's only one major downside I see to that.
Losing the teleport?
Well, no, not losing the teleport. The only ward the Titans have out right now in here is in the FG pit. So you gotta be ready to get out of there or to go in. I think that, you know, and I looked down, like none of them have anything in their inventory to drop one down for him. They're just using this bracer to kind of give them that extra vision and, of course, get that buff as well.
Right.
So that's something I think that would have to be factored into that. I think it'd be a fun play, but CycloneSpin does not end up in the best spot if he makes it happen.
Agreed. Well, I mean, minions pushing in mid and pushing in left. They're just the regular minions, so the Phoenix will deal with them just fine, but if you really want to get technical, that is the direction that the minions are flowing, so the mid Phoenix is going to take a bit of damage here.
Cyclone backed.
Oh, come on! Come on, Dave!
And guess what? He's touching
let's
the
go.
Trebuchet!
He's touching the Trebuchet! Oh, let's go!
And guess
what?
what?
He's teleporting
He's teleporting in!
We're nuts! And CycloneSpin is right back on the right side of the map, and suddenly we're fighting. But can the Titans slow play it now? Aror would sure like to, but a double freeze out of Genetics has made life awkward. Where does the Scarab's Blessing go? I'm not sure he got it onto Layers in time, or if he's going to be able to. Layers solo! Oh no! Well, Paul gets it anyway. Layers dies. Paul gets the Scarab's Blessing, but it times out. It's worst case scenario for the Titans, and the Camelot Kings working down their third health bar of the team fight, and out of nowhere, this game is broken wide open.
I mean, look, it's just a little bit of space, but that's all they needed. Cyclone loses that presence on the front line, instead shows up around the blue buff. But look, Sot's a little deep. They're focused on the kills. They're not grouped up. I mean, they're going to be able to get Cyclone. Look, they've got so much time
in the game now, right?
to burn through this. Sot's just playing distraction factor for Ymir.
The Bifrost. Netrioid just took Bifrost from base all the way to the blue buff of the Titans. At this point, if Genetics can just delay the back of SOT,
and he will,
should be a game win for the Camelot Kings. A bit of intrigue to be had, but a slow play around the Fire Giant turned into a real awkward Scarab's Blessing means the Camelot Kings grab game number 1.
2 fights, and the 2 big winning fights for the Kings there were one with patience, not necessarily around the presence prior to it, although I am going to have to give them credit for that, but one with patience at the Scarab's Blessing. I mean, if those reses come through, you've got more healing from Paul. You know, the first time around, I believe it was thrown onto layers in that first FG fight. That means you've got a little more damage that's going to be available to you. A lot that they were lacking out of because that Scarab's Blessing didn't get used in a way where it was just going to insta-pop, things like that. And even towards the end, you were mentioning it.
Yep.
You get layers, like right as he lands, then that's going to be a res versus throwing it onto Paul, which gave them a lot more time to think about it, breathe it through. It's just little plays like that, but those are the downsides. Khepri can give a lot back to your team if those ults can go through, and unfortunately for the Titans, they just didn't happen.
What a methodical game that was from the Camelot Kings. Few kills back and forth, but really around the FG. That's where the Kings made their money. Genetics on point, as always, on the Ymir. And a good-looking game number 1 to the Camelot Kings. Can the unique style of the Tartarus Titans grab a win in game 2? You gotta stick around to find out.
too. And then I ain't gotta lie to you. iPhone, new flows in it. Don't be tryna put your nose in it. I ain't gotta lie to you. New whip in it. It be hard not to speed in it. I ain't gotta lie to you. Talk with a lot of emphasis. Like me, only difference is I ain't gotta lie to you. I know you're gonna learn to love me. Cause I be pretty when it's ugly. I hit her with a Dougie. I told her, baby girl, you love me. But keep the gavel, don't judge me. I'm everywhere the sun be. I'm at the crib sitting comfy. I go bananas on the monkey. I turned it to a junkie. And all my from the country. But we be flying out the country. My pockets on chunky. Quarter ounce of the musty. Talking numbers with the trusty. I see you getting rusty. Busted baby looking busty. Heard them hating, that disgust me. Man, don't even discuss me. 1 week, 2 shows in it. One bad, 2. And then I ain't gotta lie to you. iPhone, new flows in it. Don't be tryna put your nose in it. I ain't gotta lie to you. New whip in it. It be hard not to speed in it. I ain't gotta lie to you. Talk with a lot of emphasis. Like me, only difference is I ain't gotta lie to you. I know you're gonna learn to dig me. Cause I be poking at your kidney, your old history. I do my thing, it ain't no mystery. She gon' ride it like she miss me. I'm moving like a let's make a toast, I'm getting tipsy. I'm tryna do it like Hov, tryna do it like Nipsey. And with that drama, they can miss me. Blue commas on crispy, her underwear misty. She said her was her best friend. Baby girl, I ain't a freshman, just see this.
Fortunately for the Tartarus Titans, their unique style of play does not net them a win in game number 1. It's the Camelot Kings who come out on top. And Mifflin, something that you were talking about, you know, coming into that matchup where early game should get some pressure for the Titans, and it did get them some early pressure. And then team fights were going to be the name of the game. Can they kill the Camelot Kings? The answer to that one was not quite. Not enough damage out there at those fire giant fights. It really only took 2 moments for the Camelot Kings to pick apart the Tartarus Titans draft and take them down in game number 2.
Yeah, I mean, any composition that's going to be lacking in a standard front line is really going to struggle to start off the engagement, at least around these neutral objectives. So in spite of the Tartarus Titans having just a plethora of damage output between their 2 mages, it felt like they struggled to find opportunities in which they could leverage that damage. Whereas the Camelot Kings, with a much more standard composition, could just walk in. Once they started the Fire Giant, it was, all right, well, if you walk in, we'll have variety, just run you down. We'll have CaptainTwig do the exact same thing. Whereas on the other side, it felt like the beginning of the fight for the Tartarus Titans began and ended with 9 turns Blessing. And that was the majority of it. Aror was relegated to sitting a little bit further in the back line because he wanted to find priority Scarab's Blessings. And SOT on Scylla, sure, could in an ideal world find a triple root to start a fight, but ideal worlds don't really align too often.
None. Multiple times at the very beginning of the game, we did see Aror's Scare's Blessing save a couple of people, really stop these team fights. It saved CycloneSpin, it saved Layers at least once earlier on. But then once we got down to the fights, you can see that the Camelot Kings started ignoring the target who had that ultimate on them and started working on, well, just about anybody else who was in the vicinity. And then this final team fight, the one that ends up closing out the game, the Camelot Kings can walk out with game number 1 to themselves. 2-0-4 for Netrioid, 3-0-6 for Variety. Everybody on the Camelot Kings with a stellar performance out there. Only a couple of blemishes as far as the... Whoa, hold on now. Camera couldn't see that one. Point the Nerf gun away from me. Maybe point it at the Camelot Kings, who are a little too overpowered right now in this first game up against the Tartarus Titans. Now some adaptations to be made by the Titans. But I got to ask you, Mifflin, at this point, the Tartarus Titans have done these wacky drafts. It worked against the Jade Dragons earlier on. The Ullr, the Poseidon, the solo lane. Kind of worked kind of half and half against the Olympus Bolts. Didn't work in game 1 against the Camelot Kings. Do the Titans just go back to a more standard method of play to try and find a win? Or do you think that they just keep trying this strat until it finally pays off?
I think it depends, right? How much do the Tartarus Titans put weight on this portion of the phase? How much are they really wanting to find the win here today? I feel like, if anything, a lot of the top-tier teams in the league right now are really utilizing this portion of the phase to hone in on their style. If the Tartarus Titans think these mage solos, these high damage output solo laners with low survivability are the future of this team, like compositionally, how they want to build as we start to approach Worlds, then I suppose they can keep with it. But SOT has made a name for himself on these Warriors. I know it's been a couple of weeks since we've seen him just locking in the standards, but he is incredibly capable of it, and the Tartarus Titans generally have performed very well when they have those standard compositions. So hard to say whether or not they will continue to go towards the Poseidons, the Scyllas, the Ools. But if history's any indicator, recently, I think they just might.
They may just do so, and as far as the bans are concerned, largely the same from game number 1 until now. If this is a Yemoja by the Titans, it'll be the same 3 bans by them. The Camelot Kings will continue with the Morgan and Ullr. I believe Chernobog was that final one for them in that first game. So looking at least the same kind of bans, which is interesting because, you know, it's something that we talked about at the top of the first game where it's going to be very standard bans across the board. Usually game 2 is where you start seeing that counterplay potential. For the Camelot Kings, there's nothing that they really needed to counterplay up against. They don't need to target any one thing specifically. Tartarus Titans maybe kind of feeling in that same boat where they don't need to, but they will take Ardio away. So this leaves an interesting position for the Camelot Kings. Yemoja is up, something that Aror can definitely play over on the side of the Titans. So it's a matter of, do the Kings risk leaving that pick up and hoping that the Tartarus Titans don't take it, or do they just ban it away and give something safe over to the Titans?
If the Kings leave Yemoja up, I think it is a fair bit of analysis to say the Titans are very likely to just immediately take it for themselves. So what would that leave for the Kings? They could get BigManTingz on his Poseidon if they so choose. King Arthur served the Kings very well in the previous match. They can go back towards that. Is that enough of a value trade-off to, I suppose, reconcile giving Yemoja to the other side? Hard to say, and the Camelot Kings trying to figure out exactly that bit of mental math. Is it worth it to allow Aror to play that pick? So now the Kings trying to figure it out. I mean, by rote, at the highest level play, Yemoja with a win rate as she's got, I'm pretty sure I would just ban it if you think it's going to the other side, which is reflected as she has seen 73% bans in the totality of the SPL. Instead, Chernobog taken away. So in this game of chicken, now the Titans, it's their move. Are you taking Yemoja for yourselves? Is Aror feeling confident on that pick?
No.
Answer's no. Eset locked in.
Wow.
And we know what genetics does on that pick.
Yeah, I believe the last 3 times he's gotten this god, it has been a win for the Camelot Kings. It was the only time that it got picked last week. Every other time was a ban and went to genetics, and the Kings won. And so now the Kings can just grab that right here. I imagine they don't want to play a second round of chicken against the Tartarus Titans. If genetics is successful on it, you might as well go ahead and grab it. An 87% win rate across 15 games should tell you the story of how good this god is, and especially how good it is in the hands of genetics.
Yeah, genetics probably smiling ear to ear right now. Maybe not. A lot of these pro players don't like playing the absolute cream of the crop. They're so used to it.
7 for 8.
7 for 8.
He's won 7 out of the 8 games he's gotten at this fate, or this year, I should say.
Wow.
pretty good.
Well, the Titans would like to tarnish that record, but even if they did win, that record would still be pretty impressive. So the Camelot Kings, or at least genetics, probably just fine in this situation. Osiris flanking that lock-in. Some flex potential into both Soul Lane and the jungle. More likely is headed for the jungle. Ravana on the other side. SOT might not be locking in standard warriors, but if that is for SOT, might as well just be a warrior.
Yeah, I mean, we've been seeing a lot of this Ravana. I believe SOT was one of the first players to bring this Ravana to the solo lane, kind of show off the damage mitigation build, had the near 100k mitigation game that kind of broke that meta wide open. And at least for the Tartarus Titans, they'll at least grab something that worked out for Aror in game number 1, something that Aror has seen a lot of success with in this Khepri. So some safety over into the dual lane, a little bit of bailout for the remainder of the team with that ultimate. And then Netrioid going to go back to his standard Chiron that he's been playing quite a bit as of recent.
Good damage, good lockdown, good chase potential. Centaurus being so far range, lining up those masterful shots. Pretty adept at closing target at some of these less mobile gods in the Titans. Eset in particular likely will struggle into that matchup come late game team fight. Ravana to a certain extent going to be pretty safe against it. Overhead kick to avoid the masterful shot. Even if you do get tagged, means that you probably won't fall down in those situations. And with Khepri there, Scarab's Blessing should keep anyone who is low HP alive in that regard. But Chiron into Khepri is an interesting matchup in that in the dual lane, whoever's using their mobility first, be it the abduct or the giddy up, probably just loses. You abduct whoever the support is, Yemoja, for the Camelot Kings, all of a sudden you've been kicked into a tower. And the inverse is true. If Chiron decides to initiate, then all of a sudden Khepri has got a bit of a counter matchup there as well. So just a plug-and-play Guardian for the Tartarus Titans, plug-and-play Guardian for the Camelot Kings. So far, top selections don't really say too much about your draft, besides the fact that Eset probably will be, or will definitely rather be, the best confirmation on map, as she is just so good at going in towards these objectives. So the Camelot Kings, in that position, might look to take a bit more global presence for themselves, or could go the opposite direction. If you can't out-secure, maybe you can out-burn.
Well, with the 4 bans coming through for the second wave, 3 of them being mages, but 2 of them going for solo lane as of recent at least. Scylla and Poseidon taken away by the King, so SOT might just be pushed back onto this Ravana. We have seen Layers pilot it before. It was a matchup against the Jade Dragons. He went 4-1-4 on that pick, so some flex with it. With this Khepri locked in, seems that Layers will be taking that Ravana. So we are, at least for the moment, we still have to wait to see what CycloneSpin locks in, going to see a somewhat normalized and more standard draft out of the Tartarus Titans. It all depends on what Cyclone goes with that final pick. Will it be a traditional hunter? The answer to that one is yes. Xbalanque, the final pick for the Titans.
A hunter, to be sure. Traditional, I'm not so certain of that. I mean, he's been rising in popularity, at least in the North American SEC. Been seeing a fair deal more. Xbalanque has decent damage output. If you want to, can go towards Death Toll, essentially making that branching bola free clear for you. Decent scaling into the late game. We've seen this like 0 attack speed, all pure damage build from Xbalanque, critting for upwards of 1,000 come late game, which could be interesting. Nemesis locked in.
10th pick too.
10th pick Nemesis, but you've already got the Osiris. So is this a flex towards the solo lane? I'd argue yes for Osiris. I'd rather see Nemesis in the jungle. But with Khepri in lane, both of those gods have got pretty decent matchups. I'm not certain that either one of the 2 probable solo laners for the Camelot Kings feels too threatened by Khepri, or even Ravana to that extent. So it's just whichever one of the 2 they'd like to get involved earlier. You probably want the Osiris involved earlier, but no, I'm going Nemesis jungle. The Kings don't. They're not weirdos. They're not weirdos.
They're not as strange. If this was on the other side, Nemesis solo probably over towards that. I think SOT was one of the first person to bring that over to the SPL solo lane, at least for a little while there. So a bit of a standardized draft from both of the teams now. So the Tartarus Titans going away from their weird Bellona carry, Poseidon / Scylla / Ullr solos. And now we get a look at a much more traditional style of composition. Khepri has been coming up a couple of times here and there. Now, how do you feel about Khepri as one of the primary initiators, at least for the Tartarus Titans up against the Kings?
Khepri blink engage is so linear, right? It's I'm going to blink it, I'm going to knock up, and that's it. There's not really a whole lot of conversation around it. Pretty mitigatable. Not the hardest CC on the planet. Like, the knockup doesn't last super long. So being your only initiator, I think, does lend the draft of the Tartarus Titans more so to counter engage. They're going to wait for the Camelot Kings to get aggressive more often than not.
Yeah, BigManTingz going to be going back to them. Oh, God. I don't even right in the pocket. Anyways, BigManTingz going back onto the Merlin. Last time he played at a 4-1-4 game. I believe he was also top of the damage charts for his team. It is one of those ones where he kind of questioned how well the Merlin would do with the team composition that he had drafted around it. This time, you're looking at a Chiron for some backline, long-range damage, some very solid clear around these siege defenses, which is something that we didn't really have to see in the last game. It was all about the team fight in the jungle. How do you feel about having this Merlin and this Chiron as your kind of your backline for these team fights in the jungle?
Chiron is self-sufficient. He can kind of take care of himself a fair bit, which is why I think we see him so often in ranked. But Merlin, on the other hand, needs help. Together, it's a pretty strong backline up against the die potential of the Tartarus Titans. Ravana's going to be very tanky come late game. Khepri, for the most part, very mobile as well as pretty tanky. Could be difficult for the Camelot Kings to take care of themselves, but it's not about taking care of yourself. It's a Yemoja draft. You got healing, you got HP shields, you got walls, you got riptides. So it's not so much, are we concerned for the backline? I would just say no. Yemoja should shore up all of those concerns on her own.
In that case, do you think that Phantom Shell is a necessity for the Tartarus Titans? I mean, they've got, what, like one person who can get themselves out of it at that point? Could be a question that the Tartarus Titans have to answer in game number 2. We'll throw it right over to Dave and Gormizer to kick it off.
I just want to make it clear that Mifflin's use of the Nerf gun as a
1 out of 10.
1 out of 10, by far. The timing was bad. The framing was bad.
And he could have shot you.
Could have shot me. Right now, I could be getting shot with a Nerf gun, and yet here we are, not getting shot by a Nerf gun.
That being said,
Unbelievable.
we did learn in the green room, you might have an like a shield, because I tried to shoot you with 2 different darts, and both of them fell flat before they could get there.
You did hit me with 1 dart.
But that was like point blank. That doesn't even count. That like.
Yeah, it was a bit of a sting.
I was like this far from you.
That's true. It did sting just a bit. As game 1,
Dude, he's got the gun, dude. I'm nervous.
Yeah, but if you shot us right now, it would be even worse of it. It would be 0 out of 10.
I thought I saw him cock the gun.
There's no payoff.
Someone in production's about to get got with a dart.
Yeah, watch out, production. Mifflin's on his way, and he's got a Nerf gun. Anyway, you know what did sting, Gore? Probably game 1 for the Tartarus Titans. Now, they do return back to some normalcy in their composition here. CycloneSpin's actually playing a Hunter.
My God.
Oh, my. What's happening? They're in dire straits, Cyclone playing a Hunter. So I look forward to seeing how this game looks for the Titans. I don't know if it was a compositional issue necessarily in game 1 for the Titans. I think the Kings just played their comp very effectively. Genetics with the walls, the lockdown, things like that. Layers under some threat, though. This would be the worst way to start game number 2. Double dash down from Twig. Got to be getting close to the slow on the clap. A little bit more damage, and there it is. Camelot Kings with a long burn of a first blood. End up dropping layers.
And let's talk about how annoying those 2. You know how last game I went on a whole thing about slows? Let's talk about Slice and Dice and Osiris. 2 abilities and a god that just slows you down. I mean, there was no way for layers without
doing it again.
see him
Get
out of there. Whew. That's a good stun from Paul to keep himself alive. But even still, I mean, can you call this living? I mean, look how low he is. What can he do?
What is life,
this much health bar? As hopefully sustain a little bit, maybe a little help from layers there. But that is a good first blood. I think that is the best way to try and play gods like that when you're up against someone like a Ravana. No dash, no until level 5, big way to escape you. He was still level 1, so it's not like he even had his kick to try and immune things for that long. I think that's just well played.
Variety a bit low, but I'm sure very fluent in the Chulainn matchup as an Osiris, so he'll be just fine. So a bit of a delay to layers spiking up in this game. CaptainTwig grabs first blood. So a nice look for the jungler of the Camelot Kings. You do expect layers to still hit a power spike here in a few minutes. The sort of late, early, mid-game style of the Ravana has always felt good, but Twig has just been relentless. Layers is here, but what does it matter? I mean, my goodness, the damage of the Kings, it's not hidden. It's not subtle.
I think it might just be another kill.
Oh, man, this is brutal. CaptainTwig doesn't grab the killing spree, but does give a kill over to Variety. And look, Sot has the most valuable primer crown on, but he was looking real. It was like a sad kid at a birthday party for a moment there.
It's still very much like that. Look at him.
I mean, just so unlucky with the way that this game has started. And the Kings, again, have just run over the right side of the map. 2-0 already for Twig.
He planned an outdoor pool party, and there's a thunderstorm.
And it's starting to rain right now, right? He's like, I'm back on the Chulainn. I'm playing Warriors. We're feeling good. It's like the Gru meme where like the 4th panel is, my jungler's 0-2 at the start.
Wait, my jungler's 0-2.
My jungler's 0-2, what? Well, again, hopefully able to stabilize. It's an XP deficit to be sure by layers, but maybe about half a level. Variety gets the 1 level lead over SOT. So now it's about pushing that, right? It's about the next blue buffs, having Twig and Variety there, getting some pressure built up where there is now a kill and an assist lead for the Kings.
I think that's going to be something wild. You know, the level 5 for an Osiris versus the level 5 that you're going to get out of the Chulainn, I honestly think favors Chulainn anyway, like, big knock-up. Yeah. You've got a good leap. I think for Variety, this means safety. It does mean engage in the event that we have Twig come back over with the amount of pressure he's been exuding so far. Might be able to find another kill because of something like that, help deal with the healing, good amount of damage, but it really is when you start to see those 2-level leads in solo lane that things get more out of hand over there and more out of hand in the game, because otherwise you're still like just close enough. You're still within that range, within a grab. A level 6 versus a level 5 isn't crazy different. There's certain moments like, right, your level 9s, 17s, things like that, when you're getting those extra ult points, 13 as well. Those can really be big in impact, but I think over here we're going to be in for more of the same. That might have been the best opportunity. I think it's amazing that the Kings were able to get that, because less important to me is maybe the lane control, and more important to me is the amount of gold and farm that it set them up. Because you had mentioned it, but not just like blue buff invades, things like that, being able to potentially look for those, but also just controlling this. I mean, Layers, you know now, is not in a good position to try and fight into your jungle. And you, if you're Twig, can go forward, drop some wards, get vision everywhere that you see it, and strip things away from the Titans without having to worry about him being able to catch up.
Right. And look, Twig has, I think, proven at this point. There's always been this discussion with Twig, like, do you only play the facilitator style of jungles, things like that. I love this look for Twig. The Nemesis, the run it down, grab a few kills early, play with some confidence. It's a great look for not only Twig, but I think the Kings. And here we go. Some pressure on the blue buff.
Genetics is here.
Genetics is here as well, so should be, with this level of emphasis, a confirmed blue buff for the Kings, and it is. So Sot loses a little XP. Again, I mean, it's a three-way split if Genetics was in range, so less about gaining that golden XP for Variety and Twig, which is nice, but also denying it from Sot and Layers. Figure this might be the story of the right side of the map for a little while. Suppose with solo lane core, it is nice, you know, Sot is going to get tankier, harder to kill, harder to gank, things like that. So it's less kill pressure at a point and more jungle invade pressure.
The thing that I think is most interesting to me, it does kind of signify, I think, where the Kings think the pressure is best exuded against the Titans, that they're putting such a focus, not just on Sot, but onto Layers, right? Layers has been a huge portion of this. But you go back in time and, you know, like, I'm trying to think of last year. There are a few games, even this year, a few games where we talk about CycloneSpin being like the big player. But a lot of the time, over the last couple of years, a team with Paul has played through Paul. That's what we've been talking about. That's what we kind of pointed at.
Yeah.
And so it feels important to me that that's kind of shifted. It's not just let's sit on Paul and make him stop. I think that they see the Eset and recognize that they can do something against it.
Another chance for the Kings to get a kill. Scarab's Blessing will time out, and BigManTingz picks up a simple one on Aror.
Man, this one's just clinical.
It does feel that way, doesn't it? That's just Aror overextending. Scarab's Blessing, yes, but a full team rotation out. Now everyone on the Kings has gotten involved in something. I don't necessarily want a Merlin getting off to a good start. You know, later in the game, the burn is there anyway. I don't want it to happen any earlier than it needs to. And Titans need to warm something up here. Aror was rubbing the hands together just a moment ago, but early game of this one not looking great for the blue side.
You remember Masters, this Titans squad was able to take care of the Kings pretty easily, I would say, in the finals. Looked pretty, not necessarily like super one-sided, but they were the stronger team on the day. And a majority of those games were very much in their favor. Last time they played, though, Phase 2 earlier this year, it's 2-0 for the Kings. And the Kings, I mean, at this pace, are looking to try and replicate something like that. I think that, again, they're putting a good amount of pressure. They're isolating players like Paul, and they're making it look almost easy.
Remember, there's going to be a circle of protection for the burst heal at the end, and beads used by Paul. Blink out from CaptainTwig.
This could be big.
And the Mystic Rush from Layers. Spirit Ball helps Layers get the first kill of the game on to CaptainTwig. Great target to grab. Now Variety, slowed, stunned, utility out of mid. A good Riptide, all right into the Spirit Ball, though. But a Lord of the Afterlife, that is unreal. Keeps Variety alive. Wondered if Layers would maybe dive the tier 1 tower, but no. Tartarus Titans will just be happy with the 1.
Honestly, the 1 plus the farm, you finally get to walk into the jungle. Man, I don't call for this often, but I would have loved if Layers had taken like just 10 steps further, seen that speed buff and stripped it away just as like a good, I mean, that's a good sign of life to me, is if you're behind, things aren't going well, and you're still able to get this. Now Variety, though, he's the one in trouble.
And Variety doesn't have Lord of the Afterlife. Remember, I had to use it a second ago for disengage, but pretty tanky. Sovereignty doing serious work for Variety. Retribution down, but now is CaptainTwig the one in a bit of trouble. Not much of a chance for Variety to live that, and that's on point. Game knowledge, game awareness from the Titans. Look, Variety just used his ultimate. Super immobile. Obviously doesn't have blink.
Love it.
Let's take him off the map. Now the Camelot Kings, their answer is one of the earliest Gold Furies we'll see in this meta at all. Sub 10 minutes near unheard of. And when you've got a Merlin on your team, with a well underway Book of Thoth and a kill in his back pocket, you can do these types of things, and the Kings pull the Gold Fury and bring that gold lead right back to 2K.
Of all the things I want to focus on, it is that Gold Fury, right? I mean, classic Smite, hey, I've got 3 guys in solo. Get something on the left-hand side. That's something Historically, it's the Gold Fury. Get it. It got tankier. It got harder to kill. It hits harder now. The way they just tanked that, though, and watching specifically, I believe it was Tings and Genetics with, Netrioid standing outside the circle. Genetics would walk in, pull the Gold Fury towards him. Then Merlin steps in, Genetics steps out, Gold Fury goes towards Merlin. Then swap. And just seesaw back and forth. More like an actual saw, right? Like they're chopping a log down in half.
Right.
And just well played by them to make sure that neither of them end up super low. But the thing is you get to see the timing of it, right? If you have any presence from the Titans on that left side, that's taking way too long to try and secure a Gold Fury. But because there was such a heavy investment on right, that's just a really, really good macro play from the Kings.
Unfortunately for Sot, who did 99% of that Totem of Coup, CaptainTwig shows up right at the pivotal moment and takes it for the Camelot Kings. Blue buff was already taken, so a bit delayed on the blue buff invade were the Kings. Pyromancer is now up. Gets Riptided back, overhead kick right to the second Riptide. Genetics so great at placing those abilities, and there's some good burn from BigManTingz. That'll give you an idea of where this Merlin stands. Now the Kings were so willing to pull the Gold Fury a moment ago. Yeah, why not? Send some presence over here towards right, burn down that Pyromancer, and see if you can bait in the Titans. Retribution onto Sot's head, and the Camelot Kings will take the Pyromancer relatively quietly.
I like how Twig's using this ult because the last couple of times it hasn't been for a kill, right? Even right there, that wasn't for a kill. If they could isolate Sot, they'd love it. But yeah, it's just repellent. It's just literally stopping him. You're in the cave, the Zubats aren't coming anymore, and Sot was the Zubat.
Oh
he gets pushed away, and you're absolutely keeping yourself in a very, better position. Sot has two options there. Leave the Pyromancer alone, or go in, potentially steal it, but die for it no matter what, right? There's a lower chance of steal and survive than anything else. There's a low chance of steal and die. More than likely, you just die and lose the Pyromancer. So it's just that conversation of odds. And unfortunately, he recognizes them. He got told the odds by himself. He did not want to go into that fight. I just love the way the Kings are, again, the way they're playing the map as a whole right now is just working better for them.
Feels very effective. That's a good River's Rebuke, but allows Sot just enough space to get out. And they'll burn down Sot a bit slowly. BigManTingz did not get the assist, did flicker forward in hopes of getting in range. Unfortunately, was unable to do so. And so does see a little pressure in mid to Paul, who will clear out the wave and get some free casting time, but SOT has not had a simple time over on the right side of the map.
I could see Netrioid's thinking process being that gif from Mad Max Fury Road,
That's bait.
That's bait.
That's bait.
Like CycloneSpin backing this far up in the lane at that low health. No. If I go in on this, it's bad news for me. I love the way he played that again, just kind of shifting towards the wall. Again, it's small moments like that, right? A lot of this game, at least in this set, has felt like there are little wins. Very similar if you're watching a chess match, right? Moving that pawn right now might not mean anything, but in 4 turns, it's going to be the biggest deal in the world.
Great flicker from BigManTingz. Avoids the last bit of the Spirit Ball setup, and then the root from Aror. But dove anyway, and Layers has got the damage. BigManTingz drops, and that is a killing spree for Layers. So after starting this game at 0-2, Layers has surged back and found all 3 kills of the game for the Tartarus Titans. Variety, Twig, and BigManTingz, so mid to right. All falling to this Robin. And Layers needs it. Gets a Transcendence second item, so a bit delayed, stacking up. Could call it slower paced. But I like the way Layers has played this so far. Now, gonna need to play this tower dive near perfectly. Genetics, with enough healing, a little bit of shielding, survives. Centaurus from Netrioid, again, a repellent. And everyone from the Kings will remain alive under the tower.
I like the way they play it again, just focusing on the healing, staying alive. A lot of this, last game we got to see it. Variety does need to stay alive, though, in order to make sure that this stays true. It is the gold, the farming for the Kings. In general, but yes, Pyromancer, Gold Fury, that helps out immensely early on, but a majority of this, very similar to game number 1, they've just been able to amass a lot more of a lead. So even though, I look at Layers, I see he's on a killing spree, and I think that that's a good upward trend for the Titans. I also think that that's something they have to be kind of wary of right now, is that a lot of this global gold, we've seen a couple of Scorpion steals, Totem of Coup things, but specifically in those more neutral objectives, your mid camps as well. It's going the way of the Kings. And right now, it's not a huge deal. I see tier 2s where there are tier 1s on the other side, or maybe an investment in what looks like could be something a little more expensive later on for the Kings. But that, you know, at 2,500 now is going to skew into tier 3s over tier 2s, and that's a huge power spike that the Kings will have.
Love the confidence from the Kings. I mean, this is not hidden. There were oracles down for the Titans just a moment ago. Centaurus follows up the double Riptide, and the River's Rebuke has kept Aror right in place. Scarab's Blessing, yes, and that actually delays out this fight a decent bit, so Aror can dash away on the back line. But CaptainTwig blinks forward, and with the assistance of Variety, knocks down Aror. Spirit Ball, no good from Paul. And so unfortunately, Sot gets left alone, and one by one, the Kings find their initiation. That's a fantastic River's Rebuke from Genetics. I wondered if the delay would change things, but it didn't. 2 kills plus Fury to go for the Camelot Kings.
And again, yeah, it just opens up so much. Variety's over here in a 1v2. Might take a lot of damage in the process, but really, again, Osiris, the stun, the slows. That tier 1's missing. I think the entirety of the team, or at least somebody, can come up and help him out. This is just well played by the Kings, man. I mean, good shots. I was actually worried for him at the beginning of that. The Riptide was really good. I was looking at Netrioid's damage output, though. While it might be, you know, doing pretty well, I think grand scheme, you know, what, number 5 on the charts, so just kind of barely eking into the top half. That ult did not shred through the way that you would have expected, and that's because we've gotten so used to seeing what it can do at late game that prior to late game, it does not feel as good or look quite as strong.
Pyromancer at least to the Titans. Little boost of energy back. I mean, Layers has got to carry a lot of weight here, Gore. Layers is the one on the killing spree, even with CaptainTwig, who has also had a phenomenal game, but everywhere else feels comfortable for the Kings. That said, CycloneSpin has had a good couple of fights. The light switch has helped Layers on a couple of assists, and Paul is right in there as well. So the Xbalanque scaling up nicely. Well underway into Transcendence plus some attack speed, a little bit of crit in there. Sends some damage BigManTingz' way, but Beads and Riptide from Genetics wags the finger, and the mid laner of the Camelot Kings gets out just fine.
That's where things, I think, are going to have to shift. They had a lot of burst earlier, and a lot of burst potential. I mean, Spirit Ball, like, Paul has been hitting hard.
Yeah.
It's not a lot of damage. Again, you know, 5,600, not breaking out into the top 5, but still, that 5,600 has felt very effective in terms of what it's gotten done. And so, you know, Spirit Balls with Circle of Protections, the Wing Gust afterward, like the burst that is coming out of the Eset right now has been very strong. But it is locking people down. I mean, killing off teams, killing off Twig here would be massive.
Would be great. Slow down CaptainTwig. Hard to do. Great abduct from Aror. But Twig has lived this entire time. That is unbelievable. As CaptainTwig lives. And what's worse is the Titans lose CycloneSpin on the left side of the map. You gotta hope that you can win a 4 versus 3 over here on the right. You at least get BigManTingz, but Variety now left running. Has Lord of the Afterlife, going to be very difficult to kill off this Osiris at this point. And Variety won't even have to use the ultimate. Ends up being a 1-for-1 across the map. But again, odd-numbered fights, depending on where you're looking.
I think with the amount of slows going on, if they pull back into this, Twig's coming back, they might be able to get a kill.
Lord of the Afterlife now used by Variety. Twig is back, yes, but Twig has got to leave. Genetics close by. He can provide a little bit of healing. Whereas he baited himself into a fight. Dispel Magic, great from Paul. Paul has been on point. The CC, the utility, the setup in these last couple of engagements. Looks like the Titans will just have to be happy with the kill onto BigManTingz. Back themselves away. That body language always raises my eyebrows. I'm like, you're going towards the FG. Are you just leaving or are you hanging around? Titans realize that would be a losing fight. So the 1 kill is what they'll take.
But it feels weird, right? That entire fight, I mean, the engagement from the Titans was fine. It was the Kings that feel weird. They're on the FG.
Yeah, Kings on the Fire Giant. Titans have left. It's their ward coverage.
Aror should spot
Titans
this out.
have an idea of what's going on, but are they going to react fast enough? It's down to half HP. BigManTingz going to get close by here. He'll be able to burn down the objective. Aror takes a whole mountain of damage, but so does SOT. Gets a 4-man knockup on the back end of this fight. Scarab's Blessing delayed and juggled nicely by the Camelot Kings. Ends up getting procced. And so Sot lives and the Scarab's Blessing finds some value, and the Fire Giant has been reset. River's Rebuke goes up. That's kept CycloneSpin on the back of this fight. But a Circle of Protection, good from Paul. The burst heal, not that hefty. Netrioid has found the first. He is free casted in the back line of this fight as long as it's been going on, and now Variety has got to use his mid laner as bait to get out. SOT trying desperately to finish off one of these low-held targets. But a double kill from Netrioid says no way, and the Kings grab 2 more.
I mean, look, that's just that's good bait. And I was gonna knock the Kings. Look, you go back to that fight around the tier 2 on right, and I don't know why Tingz comes in, the pathing he does, the way he does, when he does. Like, Twig was backing, Variety was low. You're a squishy mid laner surrounded by 4 members of the Titans. It felt like a weird position to get in, but the delay, the hell hold from the Kings, keeping the Titans on a leash, essentially, right in that fight, allows Twig to come back. And then, as you called it, they back away. And not only do they back away, but they fall away from the FG. They all go back to base. They are all in their lanes. And the FG gets started up by the Kings. That is just the easiest bait. They force Aror to feel low. They burn down Sot and proc the Scarab's Blessing. And they should be able to get this one no problem. I mean, they just have the numbers advantage. It was a good, clean fight. Sot, like, so close, an inch away from maybe making some masterful plays, but now, I mean, the Kings just put themselves in a winning position, and they're capitalizing on it.
Very casual Fire Giant pull and secure by the Camelot Kings. All 5 members get it. Variety just playing separator. Offensive line to keep the Titans at bay. Able to do so. Tier 2 should be an afterthought. A couple of towers in mid to take down as well, and the script seems pretty clear here. Let's get a little bit more gold as far as towers go. Go back, reset, or go back, reset now. Choose when you want to fight. Let's get the value of the Fire Giant and the Pyromancer we're going to confirm. Make our advantage as big as it can be.
I was curious as to whether or not it was going to be a full team back. It looks like it's going to be. Get some items with the gold just earned. You know, you get...
Netrioid's got 2.6K.
Yeah, you get 300 burst off the tier 2.
He wants more, though. He's taking the red.
You get the pyro, plus now the red. I mean, at this point, you're looking at what is going to be just a massive back for Netrioid. I mean, it was I would argue massive back otherwise. You got an Executioner online for Twig. That's going to open up a huge amount of damage from Netrioid that otherwise wasn't there, and from Variety. Variety gets the Spirit Robe. You get the Obsidian Shard there on Tingz. A lot of burn through. That is now available for the Kings. Netrioid, if I'm looking at it right, just upgraded some of the relics.
He did not, yeah, he didn't finish his Heartseeker, got some wards, upgraded his Bluestone, and got a Power Pot.
It is, yeah.
And so upgraded starter, Power Pot, sticking on the Tier 2 Morningstar until later notice. The Bluestone Brooch will help out. Absolutely. In some of these fights. The Camelot Kings gore, they do go back, spend up some of their gold.
If I'm honest, it's not even like he's not going to be hurting on gold. Look, they just got a Gold Fury at Tier 1. Yeah, they're going to get at least one more Tier 2.
Hey, he's fine.
You're going to be back up into the 1K mark very quickly with the amount of farm that the Kings are going to get here.
Though if the Kings have their way, they won't need to go back and spend up any more gold. A Riptide onto Aror. How many times have I said that? Not even Aror, just a good Riptide in general. Genetics has really been on point these last couple of games, and I think this phase in general for the Kings. Genetics has always been in the conversation.
He's been in the MVP vote.
The most valuable primer each and every week. It feels like he's thrown his name into that ring, and this is another example of it. Whether it's Ymir, whether it's Yemoja, it's a great way to start the week for the Camelot Kings. Some pushback from the Titans needed, but they are pushing into a River's Rebuke, and Layers has to ult away, though Variety does as well. Sot looking for the initiation, won't find it. That first burst of ultimates get used. About equal for both sides.
This is where it's important, though. Fire Giant sustain, genetics, autos, plus the 2 from a Yemoja. It's going to take a little bit, and it looks like they're going to opt to back away. But you could theoretically heal all of that up. This is that awkward spot when you get such an early FG if you're the Kings, where that you had the power and the ease to knock down every single tower. But getting into the Phoenix line, you know, 24, 23 minutes, I guess, when they were really trying to start that, with a minute and a half on the FG power play, you kind of have damage, but you don't have backdoor protection shred just yet. You know you're going to take too much. I mean, Variety's an example of that. You can't just dive the way that we're used to 30-plus minutes. And so I'm not surprised to see them all have to back off. I'm maybe a little surprised to see them do it so quickly. But now they're going to have a full minute to set up and have a very advantageous position, vision as well. Control around the Fire Giant pit's going to go very easily into their favor. And Twig backed and got an Emperor's Armor. So now Twig's going to be a little tankier in general to dive layers or Cyclone and control that. But also is going to help out his team around these Phoenixes. And to me, especially with the splits we're used to seeing, usually, what, 2-3 or a 4-1 split, the jungler typically in mid, no matter which one of those splits you go for, this is going to give an advantage to Twig or Twig plus variety to be able to leverage some more pressure onto that mid Phoenix while the team works the left if they get the next Fire Giant.
Man, I mean, if you just zoom out and, you know, just look at the Kings and the way they're playing Smite today and have been playing Smite this phase, I mean, such a difficult team to beat. The Leviathans had them figured out, and that was the one set where the Kings had some type of an answer for the questions they were posing, and the Leviathans were able to beat them in a few games. But the way the Kings team are playing right now, even with Tingz on ping, I think that's important to look at as well.
Yeah,
I mean, the fact
that's
that
massive.
I wondered if this team would stumble a bit. Now, it's something they had experience with at the beginning of Season 8, remember? Like, half the team was here for most of the year, still found ways to make it work, and apparently are still finding ways to make it work. But giving Tingz gods that he can execute on, despite his ping scenario, and giving the rest of the team the opportunity to carry a lot of the weight, I think such a great look. Now, the Titans, I wouldn't say I'm worried about, right? I mean, they're still theory crafting. They always tend to show up in these playoff events. But should this result hold, it just feels like the Kings have been asking all of the questions.
I have a favor to ask chat.
Okay.
I want someone to just get a clip right now and tell me how long that Fire Giant survived, because I feel like it was still in its spawning animation, and then it was dead. Like that was incredibly fast. The amount of burn.
Yeah,
that,
I don't know if they
Tingz
can clip anything under like 6 seconds. You know what I mean?
Well, just give it, just look at it. I don't even care. I don't want the clip. I don't want to look at it. I just want to know, like, was it a 4-second Fire Giant?
Yeah, right. From first damage to buff around the waist.
That's
I
wild.
was in the middle of my second sentence, and it was done.
Like, you might have said 3 words total in that Fire Giant from spawn to dead. Like,
Netrioid wants to start this fight. Centaurus clips for just a bit of damage on the back. Good pull in from BigManTingz. Genetics throws up the walls as well. Sot looking for the back line, gets a 3-man knockup, and the Mystic Rush follows in from layers. Genetics low, and CycloneSpin answers back with a kill. Is that the eject button now from the Camelot Kings? Are you waiting 45 seconds for Genetics to come back? This Phoenix is so low, but so is Aror. Aror has Scarab's Blessing. Gotta be careful. CaptainTwig into the back line, but he is alone in the back line. A teleport through from SOT from the fountain. Paul has detonated a second target, and suddenly the Camelot Kings are the team that have stuck around for too long. A chance for a deicide for the Tartarus Titans. Slows are connecting, but Variety still has ultimate. One last bit of damage. Even if this kill doesn't drop, Gore, a 2-kill swing for the Tartarus Titans underneath their Phoenix.
you get to see 1 FG healing, also that Soul Gem working wonders from Tingz. You repel a Fire Giant, you keep a Phoenix alive. Technically, you even got a Trebuchet in mid that you can start moving forward, and you will see moving forward. That Phoenix is so low. Theoretically, it feels so easy.
We're
for
going
someone
one
to
more
just walk
fire.
in there, try to get it. Yeah, with 2 people, look, you lose Fire Giant on 2. You've got 2 minutes left on the power play. One of them's not even back. Oh, man, at this rate, your jungle,
Figure the next one will
probably
be enhanced.
that Primal Fury that you're looking at right now, and that might just be the conversation for the Kings. All these neutral little harpies over here as well. If you want just the excess gold, might as well go for them. But trying to pressure out a Phoenix, actually, you still got plenty of time. If you go for the Fury now, you might lose that time. You might want to pick that one up on the back foot, but you might be able to get at least a fight going.
I mean, you got 98% of the Phoenix's health down with a couple of team fights. See a little poke damage this time, or you could just bait in the Titans. You know, Netrioid has sent out these Centauruses, the Centauri,
I love these pings. Look at this.
a couple of times. Camelot Kings being red here, but that's just good pressure from the Kings. Look, you push back the Titans, open up the door, drop the Phoenix in a River's Rebuke to get you out. Great placement of pressure from the Camelot Kings. Have your cake and eat it too, and now you're 45 seconds away from dropping off the buff. You're going to have a Fire Giant, or you're going to have Fire Minions rather. Granted on the right, but still Fire Minions for a little bit of time. Great setup from the Kings.
And that was the Titans looking for an ambush, right? Like, I mean, they're going pretty deep. You know, there's always that conversation of, do you try to fight outside of the base, or do you keep it just in the Phoenix line? And we saw success for the Titans in the Phoenix line. They go for some stuns, a little bit of pressure there in mid. And the minute you see like 4 people from the Titans, honestly, maybe even just 3, pings from the Kings come out on that right Phoenix. They recognize that is where we need to put our pressure. And that's what we need to focus on right now. They just make a beeline to it. I mean, it wasn't even like anything. It was the most telegraphed. We could watch it happen in real time. But it was because the Titans don't have time to back and reset for it. They can't catch up because of where they're positioned. So no matter what, you just get a free walk into the Phoenix. And like you said, free fire minions, now free pressure. While it's on the right, is still pressure. And that means that when this next fire giant spawns in about 40 seconds, you then get to have a little more control once again on the FG pit. Vision, as well as just positioning, is going to be in the favor of the Kings.
You would think, though, Titans have had some time to get a little bit of gold spooling up. Look at that wards placed battle. How about that for Genetics? Not even close. Has more than nearly 3 others combined. Aror's just not had the gold for it this game. 11 wards placed. Don't often get to talk about that, but a team player is Genetics. Dropping the wards, dropping the walls. And you know, Trelly has talked about this. The way Genetics likes to play this Yemoja is the mindset is pure CC and utility. And if I can get off enough of my rotations, get the CDR with the Pridwin, get the River's Rebuke off, that seems to be all Genetics is worried about, and you have a little bit of extra gold for wards, things like that. Fire Giant is up. This one enhanced. This one ends the game. This fight might end the game. As Variety is low, and that's good initiation from SOT, but he has taken a mountain of damage in return. So both solo laners both dive into the entirety of the enemy team, and both have to leave. But only one of them's got teleport gore, and it's Variety.
You get, I think, a little bit more, though, out of what the Titans do. They burn a lot of ults on that other side.
Layers up and over, doesn't steal away the enhanced Fire Giant, but the Circle of Protection sets up a kill onto Variety, and the Tartarus Titans at least able to pick up the solo laner of the Camelot Kings. BigManTingz burning through one, and CycloneSpin falls. And now the Kings got some wind in their sails. CaptainTwig will help out Netrioid with another Scarab's Blessing. Ushers Aror down the right side of the map, but he has got a real bad avenue back to safety. Layers, Paul, and Aror, the last 3 alive against 4 of the Kings.
I mean, this at this point is just distracting Tingz. Luckily, Tingz isn't the one you need near the Phoenix. You got the physical damage ready for you. You get the kill, and with Netrioid and with Twig, they'll knock that down. It's 4v2. There's a lot of damage in this too, though.
There sure is. Netrioid learns the hard way, but immediately sustaining back up. And how about that, Centaurus? That opens up Twig to just walk at Layers. And the Kings, outside of a stumble or 2, have looked near perfect to start off this week in the SPL. And the Camelot Kings knock down the Titan and grab a 2-0 win over the Titans.
Look, that one, game 1, there was a lot of back and forth, good pull forward from the Titans, a lot of objectives that go in their favor. Game 2,
wow,
that was just the Kings game. I mean, through and through, the first couple of kills that go their way, objectives go their way, the way they're playing the map, and the way they played that game of Smite. Like you said, a couple of stumbles, wasn't perfect, but it looked so damn good, and the Titans just did not have a response for a majority of it. And it keeps them in a position where, unfortunately for them, you're now down 0-2. That's the second time. 2 times they face the Kings so far this phase. 2 times they get 2-0'd. And with 4 losses right there, especially after the performance at Masters, you've got to wonder what they're looking at on the horizon right now. Yeah. They won't see each other until potentially the next Masters, the next big event. So what exactly are they going to be doing in that time to study the Kings and try to take them on? Because right now, this team, and you mentioned it earlier, is they've just been looking unstoppable over the last few weeks.
And I feel like this has been a Titans trend here as of late. They're you know, in the same way that the Scarabs are like a 3-game team, it feels like the Titans are a 2-game team. Whether they're winning in 2-0
or they're
getting smacked 2-0. It feels like that's the trend with this Titans squad. Didn't work out today. The Kings just a bit too clean. 2-0 for the Camelot Kings over the Titans to start off this week in the SPL. We'll go back to J-Mac and Mifflin to break it down.
Thank you so much, Dave and Gore. Game number 2 goes to the Camelot Kings in a bit of a stumble throughout, a couple of bumpy moments. I know you don't have it. I know you don't have that with you, Mifflin.
What are you talking about?
I was told that you don't have anything. Yeah, just his hand behind his shirt there. But we didn't even pan over for him to see that one. But a couple of stumbles across the way, a little bit of a bumpy road this time around, a little bit more fight back from the Titans, some good picks, maybe some overextensions from the Camelot Kings during some of these team fights to be able to be picked off during those ones. But at the end, when it came down to the true 5v5 team fight, Camelot Kings had it in spades.
Yeah, and the trend with the Camelot Kings is when they establish these massive leads, it almost feels like they limit test at times, especially in some of these later game team fights. Because you look up and I'm thinking to myself, we're 14,000 gold up. There's no way we're losing this team fight, or the Camelot Kings are losing this team fight. But then one person goes a little too far. Maybe it's an overchase. They split up a little bit. I suppose just playing with the lead that they had established for themselves. And when you've got leads like the Camelot Kings so often are able to establish, you're allowed to play around a little bit. You're allowed to go for these high-risk, high-reward plays, because even in the off chance that it's not working, off chance because you are, of course, 10,000 gold in the lead, you're not losing out on too much, because the Tartarus Titans were just such a poor position throughout the course of the mid to late game of this match. The Camelot Kings, and I think the cast just broke it down perfectly at the end of that, just go through the Camelot Kings motions. Greater Scorpions, mid camps, neutral camps, invades, neutral objectives, all their way. And eventually, once the true 5-on-5 engagement started, I feel like it had already been won.
And once we get to these team fight stages, BigManTingz so far ahead up into his build, he's able to just sit here and free cast in whatever stance he wants. That fire stance in that last little team fight there, putting out a ton of damage up against the opposition. And early on, it started really poorly for the Tartarus Titans. It was, what, 6-0 by like the 10-minute mark whenever I first looked up at that point. Unfortunate for Layers, SoloOrTroll, they kind of get picked off a few times over in their jungle. And then we saw some fight back by the Titans, so there's still some signs of life in there. But now that the Titans have gone twice up against the Camelot Kings this phase and has gone down both times 2-0 to the Kings, it kind of wonders what's in store for the Tartarus Titans as the season goes on, as we start approaching that Masters tournament later on in the phase. But for now, we do have a post-game interview with the hunter of the Camelot Kings, Netrioid, will be joining me over for the post-game desk. First off, congrats on your 2-0 win over the Tartarus Titans. Talk to me a little about this Chiron, because it's a pick you seem to be going back over to. Is that just something that's comfortable over for you in that lane? Something you feel is pretty good over there?
I just like the horse. That's the thing.
Just like the horse.
The Chiron feels like he's a different ADC. You know, you're kind of used to the auto attack builds most of the time, and with Chiron it feels like a different game, and I just feel comfortable in that pick, I will say.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you played it quite a few times. I've been getting some wins on it. And another guy that y'all have been getting some wins for, getting some wins on, and probably been getting the pick a little bit too many times. Tell me about this Yemoja, man, because every time it seems Genetics gets his hands on it, your team just looks unstoppable as a whole.
I mean, it's just Genetics. I think he grinds the game pretty hard, and he knows when he gets those picks, he's just like, he said, like, I'm just going to win this game pretty much. So that's what makes us scary, I will say, when it comes to picks and bans, because they have to choose their poison, you know, pick their poison. And if they, I don't know, give us one god that we probably win most of the time, they're pretty done, I will say.
Yeah, you guys had a nice little, a clean 2-0 for this one. And tell me how it feels, you know, getting a 2-0 against Tartarus Titans again. You know, you faced them off earlier in the phase, got the win there, get another one out here. I mean, how do you guys feel up against the Titans in general, and maybe even just as a whole in the league?
Yeah, I mean, it feels pretty good because, like I said in one interview many weeks ago, that they were kind of our nemesis, but now we're winning against them. And I will say they are playing like pretty good, but they are kind of getting predictable as well from times to time, so it makes the picks and bans way easier. So.
Okay, well, sounds like you guys have it locked down, at least against this team for now. We'll see how you guys can do in the future. Thanks for stopping by. Best of luck in your future sets, and congrats on your win.
Thank you.
So, nice little start out here for the Camelot Kings in their second phase, and I think maybe not necessarily a little bit of shade thrown that way, but a little bit talking about how the Titans are becoming a bit predictable when it comes to their picks and bans. And it's something that, you know, we talked about going into game number 2. Are they going to keep going with these weird style of plays? It's not really working out. They go to a more traditional comp, but sounds like Netrioid and the guys have it unlocked. They're able to start drafting around that one, which they always talk about as one of their strongest phases. We'll take a look at the schedule and the standings, though, to see what we still have in store for the rest of our weekend. As the rest of today, at the least, Camelot Kings started out with a nice 2-0 over the Tartarus Titans. And then we'll move on to our second set of the day, the Leviathans and the Warriors squaring off.
Yeah, really excited for this one. Atlantis Leviathans, of course, the reigning world champions. The Oni Warriors, a resurgent team that had struggled throughout the entirety of previous years, have really been stepping up, and it feels like every single week they're getting better and better and better. Were close to the bottom of the standings originally and now are closer to the middle of the pack. Atlantis Leviathan's right there with them. So I think this is a much closer matchup than you might imagine just by base, like, off the paper stats, right? Like reigning world champion, 3-time championship ring holder, Zapman up against the Oni Warriors. But I don't know. I might be getting my viewer points on the Warriors this time.
I mean, you got a couple of world champions on the sides of the Warriors. You got Neil, you got Cuba over there as well. So definitely going to be a team to watch out for and a match to watch. The 3rd and 4th seed respectively facing off, both sitting at 4 and 3. One of those going to hit that 50% on their win-loss. Another one going to find that 5 and 3 after today. Camelot Kings still reigns supreme at the top of the league after their set today. And man, with games like this and sets like these that the Kings are having, they really do feel like an unstoppable force in the league.
Yeah, I think that Netrioid really kind of puts into words how confident this team is feeling. The Tartarus Titans were our rivals. We were worried about them. All of a sudden now we're just beating them. They're becoming predictable, and that is one of the other top teams in the league. The Camelot Kings have been sitting atop their throne for a good while. I think they're allowed to say whatever they want. These guys are just dominant.
And I think pick your poison is another phrase that Netrioid threw out there. But that's it we have for our first set. We're going to take it to a quick break, and we'll come back with Leviathans versus the Warriors right after this.